Chapter 718. Beta Persei and Su Yunsheng went to carry out the order. Soon, the mercenaries' attack changed from the previous random attacks to an organized advance. As a result, the Tatar cavalry fell into a situation where they were forced to retreat step by step. It was beyond Su He's expectation that the mercenaries behind him reacted so quickly. He guessed that there might be a general in the enemy's camp who knew more about tactics and was commanding them. But now, he was not concerned about this. He was more concerned about whether the 2,000 cavalrymen he sent would be able to open a bloody path for Lord Agar Dorji to escape. Under the command of Death, the 2,000 Tatar cavalrymen launched a suicidal attack. They were not afraid of the bullets and mercenaries who were several times their number. They just lowered their heads and charged forward. This kind of desperate fighting style finally allowed them to tear open a hole, giving Lord Agar Dorji an escape route. The 3,000 Tatar cavalrymen, who were also carrying hope, left the group. In addition to the ones who fled before, there were already 6,000 to 7,000 Tatar cavalrymen who rushed out. The Tatar cavalry paid a price. Of the 2,000 cavalrymen sent out, apart from those who died in battle or were captured, none of them returned to the barracks. Phew! Sui breathed a long sigh of relief. Her heart, which had been hanging high before, was relieved. Now that Agar Dorji had escaped, his only worry was gone. The next step was to fight a bloody battle with the mercenaries. He would use his death to prove that the Tatar cavalry was not to be trifled with. At this time, nearly 2 hours had passed since Yang Chendong summoned Su Yunsheng. In an hour, the sky would be bright. At this time, Battalion Commander Su finally learned from the captives that Su He was able to unify the troops and quickly reported it to the 6th young master. Oh, this Su He actually came up with such an idea. He really has some ability. After listening to Su Yunsheng's story, Yang Chendong couldn't help but sigh. This Su He was really a capable person. Previously, he didn't know how the other party did it, so he could only win step by step. But now that he knew the method the other party used, he only needed to find a way to counter it. How about this? Pass down my orders. Everyone, stop attacking and wait for daybreak. Once the enemy attacks, the musketeers will be at the front and the archers will be at the back, suppressing them from breaking through. This was not the result that Yang Chendong wanted to see. Since that was the case, he would just surround them and not attack. What he wanted now was not to destroy them, but to conquer them. The mercenaries suddenly stopped their fierce attacks, and the front line became quiet. This scene caught Su He, who was in the midst of the final battle, off guard. When he heard that there were no more sounds of killing coming from outside, he didn't know why, but he had a bad feeling. General, could it be that they are preparing for a big attack? Some Kiliarchs who were also confused came to Su He and asked for instructions. Someone asked, "General, it's almost dawn. When will our reinforcements arrive?" That's right. The soldiers below are looking forward to it. After a night of fighting, everyone is tired and suffered heavy losses. The soldiers below are very nervous. Su He obviously couldn't say that there were no reinforcements at all. Otherwise, the army would lose their morale and be unable to fight. In order to stabilize the situation, he could only continue to make arrangements. It's not far from dawn. The reinforcements should be here soon. What we need to do now is to accumulate strength. Once the reinforcements arrive, we will attack from the inside and outside and completely defeat the mercenaries. Hearing Su He's certainty, the Kiliarchs below couldn't help but smile with joy. They immediately agreed that they would do their best to stabilize the morale of the army before leaving. Su He, who was left behind, was puzzled. Could it be that the mercenaries were really preparing to launch a big attack? If that was the case, he had already decided to lead the army to fight to the death. When the time came, even if he died in battle, he would be able to deal a huge blow to the mercenaries. He wouldn't have lived in vain. But what if the other party wasn't going to attack? What if they had other plans? What should he do then? He looked up at the sky, although it was still so dark. However, Sui knew that the sky would brighten in 2 hours. In other words, there wasn't much time left for him to fight. Sui knew that he was going to die. He wanted to fight a bloody battle with the mercenaries and die on the battlefield with the dignity of a soldier. Unfortunately, The mercenaries didn't act according to his plan. They suddenly stopped attacking and just surrounded him from afar. This gave Suhi a bad feeling in his heart. As the saying goes, what you are afraid of will come true. Just when Suhi was wondering if the other party had figured out her plan, suddenly there was a shout from the front line. The voice that only belonged to the Han people came clearly at this moment. Brothers of the Tatar cavalry, you have been fooled. You won't have any reinforcements at all. No matter Halarochu of the Shiha Regiment or Jelong of the North Slope Regiment, they have been defeated by our mercenaries. We even captured Halarochu alive. Now you are all alone. Surrender immediately. Otherwise, you will only die, and it won't be worth it. Tatar cavalry brothers, you have been fooled. We won't have any reinforcements, no matter. The shout came one after another. It was transmitted to the Tatar army through the simple loudspeakers. When the cavalrymen heard the news for the first time, they all looked at each other with ugly and angry expressions. Their faces were ugly because of the situation they were in. They were angry because they knew that they were fooled. For a moment, the camp was like a nest that exploded. No matter how hard the Kiliarchs tried, they couldn't suppress it anymore. Left with no choice, these Kiliarchs could only band together and come to Suhi to ask for an explanation. So he didn't panic like everyone thought. Instead, he rode on his horse calmly. Looking at the angry Kiliarchs, he lowered his head and admitted his mistake. I'm sorry, everyone. I lied before. We might really have no reinforcements. What? Really no reinforcements? If that's the case, what should we do next? Without reinforcements, we won't be a match for the mercenaries. That's right. What should we do? General Su, please come up with a plan. The Kiliarchs all talked at once. Facing Suhi, who admitted everything, they suddenly realized that they weren't that angry. After all, he didn't take the opportunity to escape. Instead, he stayed here like everyone else. With this, they couldn't vent their anger. First, Suhi calmed the Kiliarchs down. Then, he talked about how to deal with the mercenaries. Brothers, it's obvious that the mercenaries want to use psychological tactics to win without a fight. If that's the case, we'll all become their prisoners. We'll even live a life worse than death. Since that's the case, why don't we give it a try? Maybe we'll have a chance to survive. Even if I can't escape and die on the battlefield, I can die a happy death and be a hero. General, you mean? The Kiliarchs had already guessed what Suhi was going to do next. I mean, let's give it a try and kill our way out. Let's leave it to fate. Suhi also knew that at this moment, he could only tell the truth. Only then would they have a chance to live. Breaking out of the encirclement wasn't an easy thing to do. Most people might even lose their lives here. But as Suhi said, if they didn't do this, they didn't have any better choice now. These Kiliarchs looked at each other and finally nodded helplessly. After getting the support of these Kiliarchs, Suhi immediately gave the order for the entire army to charge out under the cover of the moonlight. After the order was given, the Tatar cavalry who were still doubting whether they were tricked were speechless by General Suhi's sincerity. Although they were angry, they didn't want to be captives. They didn't even dare to imagine what life would be like as captives. They could only try their best and hope that the heavens would take care of them and let them live. Every single one of them held onto the hope that they could survive. One by one, they unsheathed their cavalry sabers. Taking advantage of the fact that the sky had yet to brighten, they charged out to kill. When the hundreds and thousands of Tatar cavalry charged out, their battle formation was quite large. The moment the earth shook, the Tiger's Man independent regiment guarding the outermost perimeter felt it. As the regiment commander, Tiger's Man immediately ordered the 3 battalions of musketeers to get ready. At the same time, he ordered the soldiers who were burying the mines to retreat and prepare for battle. Behind the independent regiment, the Wind Chaser division that reinforced the 1st Regiment of Cavalry also prepared their bows and arrows, ready to fire at any time when the enemy approached. More and more Tatar cavalrymen were charging towards them. They seemed to have understood their situation. If their first charge was fruitless, then it would be even more difficult for them to come up with a good result. This time, the number of cavalrymen charging towards them increased, and their speed was also very fast. Although it was night, the earth was shaking, giving people the feeling that thousands of men and horses were bravely charging through a single plank bridge. Because of this, many of the mercenaries' expressions became very cold. Some of the soldiers even had cold sweat coming out of their palms. Sensing the nervousness of the soldiers, Tiger Edge, who had always been by Yang Qindong's side and had developed the aura of a general, laughed out loud. "Everyone, don't panic. We are well prepared. The enemy won't be able to rush over." As if to prove his words, a deafening explosion suddenly rang out. Streaks of fire soared into the sky and dyed the originally dark night. It actually lit up the eyes of the soldiers, allowing them to clearly see everything that was happening in front of them. Chapter 719. In the end, the Tatar cavalry still managed to rush into the landmines, triggering lightning and fire, sending countless enemy cavalry into the sky. After the landmines exploded, the fragments flew into the bodies of many Tatar cavalrymen, making them look like hedgehogs, screaming and wailing in pain. Under this kind of attack, the Tatar cavalry that rushed quickly became the target of the attack. Some of the cavalry at the front didn't even have time to shout before they were swallowed up by the ruthless power of the landmines. The powerful landmines caused the Tatar cavalry to involuntarily stop in their tracks. Their faces were pale as they looked forward. Their hearts were filled with complex feelings, but they were unable to speak. Fire. With the help of the monstrous flames, Tiger's man noticed that many Tatar cavalry had stopped 500 meters in front of them. He made a prompt decision and gave the order to fire. He knew that at this time, if he gave the enemy a heavy blow, it would be the last straw. It would play an extremely important role in deterring the enemy. With a loud shout, the 3 battalions fired at the same time. Although in the darkness, the accuracy of these auxiliary soldiers was greatly reduced, but the number of Tatar cavalry was large enough. Coupled with the fact that they weren't prepared at all, a burst of gunshots rang out. Who knew how many Tatar cavalry fell from their horses? First, the landmines sent people into the sky. Then the firearms easily took people's lives. Under this kind of pressure, the Tatar cavalry had no choice but to retreat one by one. Originally, it seemed that the first attack with great momentum was fruitless. On the contrary, it was a big blow to their morale. After the failure of the assault, when most of the cavalry returned, many of them had a pessimistic expression on their faces. Many of them were already scared. In this kind of situation where they couldn't even see how many enemies there were and where many of their brothers had died. This kind of fighting style really made them unable to see any hope of victory. After he learned about the situation at the front line, he couldn't say a word for a long time. He knew that the situation might be worse than he imagined. If they couldn't rush out, then wouldn't it mean that they could only choose to surrender? The battlefield once again fell into silence. The mercenaries' voices came again. It was still the same words as before, but compared to before, this time some people began to be moved. The curses were also much less than before. The persuasion continued, and the sky finally began to brighten. After their vision returned to normal, the Tatar cavalry only felt more despair. In this kind of situation where their every move was clearly seen by the enemy, it would naturally be much more difficult for them to escape. At dawn, the persuasion continued, but the mercenaries didn't take a step forward. They also didn't rely on the advantage of the firearms in their hands to attack. Instead, they began to cook. Smoke spirals, and not long after, the aroma of meat. "Young master, our logistics camp chefs are all here. They're still using the condiments produced in Crimson City. Along with the freshly slaughtered meat, it will definitely be fragrant." Yang Er walked in front of Yang Qindong, as if he was presenting a treasure, looking for praise. "Very good." Yang Qindong nodded with satisfaction. While looking at the Tatar cavalry camp, he said, "Food is the most important thing to the people. The temptation of food can often achieve the goal of invincibility." Yang Qindong's guess was right. Using food to lure the enemy had proven to be very useful. In the past, the mercenaries had often used this trick to destroy the enemy's morale. This time, it was also successful. Yesterday afternoon, before the sky turned dark, they had eaten dinner. Now, it had been nearly 12 hours during their escape. Because the mercenaries were chasing closely behind them, some of the pots and bowls of food they brought along were thrown away halfway. They thought that they could kill their way out before dawn, so no one was worried about this matter. But now, after dawn, many of the cavalry's stomachs began to growl. Although many of them had a certain amount of dry food on them, it was absolutely not a problem for them to survive for at least 2 or 3 days. But the problem was that was cold food. How could it be compared to hot food that was overflowing with the aroma of meat? After using the MSG and other things produced by Chicken City, the taste was particularly delicious. Saying that the aroma would spread for 10 miles might be an exaggeration, but with the morning breeze, it would not be a problem for it to spread for 2 to 3 miles on the open ground. When the aromas spread to the Tatar cavalry camp, many of the cavalry's expressions became somewhat abnormal. Especially those who were preparing to take out their dry food, their expressions became even more unsightly. Comparing people to people would lead to death, and comparing goods would lead to throwing away. Compared to the aroma of the fresh meat, the cold dry food was too tasteless. At this time, the voice urging them to surrender sounded again. Among them, there were some words about food. For example, the mercenaries promised that as long as they surrendered, they would immediately be able to eat fresh meat. At that time, they would be able to eat hot flatbread and drink meat soup. It would definitely be a delicacy. The picture outlined made many of the cavalry unable to help but make a swallowing motion. Then, the soldiers looked at each other, as if they were somewhat tempted. Hello everyone, my name is Hulu, an authentic Mongolian. In a battle, I became a captive of the mercenaries. I originally thought that my life would be worse than death. But who would have thought that not only would I be able to live a better life and receive more money every month, I would also become a commander of 1,000 soldiers. The reason why I am telling you all this is to tell you that the reason why we gave up our homes and fought with our blood and flesh is because we want to live a better life. Right now, the opportunity is in front of you. As long as everyone surrenders to the mercenaries like me, as long as you have the ability, you do not have to worry about not being valued. This is the most realistic experience of a surrendered commander of 1,000 soldiers. Hello everyone, my name is Taimur, in Nuzan Cavalry. It was also in a battle that I became a captive of the mercenaries. Similarly, I am now a commander of a battalion. Now, I can save up a lot of money every month. Not only is my food better than before, my clothes are also better than before. Once this war is over, I can find a beautiful girl from the grassland and start a family. Then, I will have a bunch of children and live a life where I will not have to worry about food and drink. Haha. Hello everyone, my name is Lu Dai, and I am also a Nuzan. I am also a captive. Previously, I was a deputy Chinhu in Biming's New or Gondusi region. Now that I am a deputy commander, my treatment is more than 10 times better than before. Come quickly. There is delicious food that can strengthen our bodies. There are even sharper and more durable cavalry swords. There are also more high positions waiting for you. As long as everyone is willing to work hard, your future is limitless. Hello everyone, my name is Yila, and I was originally a Chinhu in Biming's New Gondusi region. Now, I am a commander of the Nuzan Cavalry. After coming to the mercenaries, the most authentic experience I have had is that they have the best military treatment in the world. They have the strongest weapons in the world. They also have the most generous rewards in the world. As long as you are here, as long as you can mount a horse and kill the enemy, as long as you are sincere enough, this place will become the paradise you have always dreamed of. Come, we welcome you. One by one, the officers stepped forward to share their experiences. They expressed their views on the mercenaries and their own experiences from different perspectives. They did not speak of any great principles, but the more simple their words were, the more they could gain the approval of the ordinary cavalry. They could resonate with them. As the voices of these officers reached the Tatar camp, the expressions of many of the cavalry changed. They were eager to move. It was as if they were only missing an opportunity to stand up and choose to surrender. The Kiliarchs who were in charge of them naturally felt this change. They all anxiously went to General Su He, hoping that he could think of a solution that would satisfy both sides. However, Sui did not say anything. He only looked at the sky helplessly and shook his head. Everyone had the right to choose their own way of life and their own future. He could not interfere. In fact, he could not interfere either. Otherwise, if he forcefully suppressed them, it would cause a mutiny. On the contrary, if these soldiers could have a good way out, he would be happy. Forget it. Since that is the case, let's send some of the injured soldiers to them first. It is also good to see if these mercenaries are true to their words. If they are, you can choose to surrender in order to live a better life. If not, then we'll fight them to the death. At worst, we'll just die. Hearing Suhi's words, all the Kiliarchs were speechless. However, they could not refute it. Could they say that the general was wrong? Could it be that it was wrong for a general to find a way out for his soldiers? No one objected, and they could not object. After the order was passed down, some of the wounded Tatar cavalry became the first batch of captives to be sent to the mercenaries. Then everyone watched helplessly as the mercenaries dispatched a lot of troops. They used a stretcher to carry the Tatar cavalry away from the battlefield. At this moment, some people were envious of the injured soldiers. It seemed that only the wounded could openly defect to the enemy without being blamed by anyone. There were still calls to surrender from time to time, but as time passed, no one knew if the Tatar cavalry had become numb or if there were orders from above. In short, no one saw any uninjured cavalry choose to surrender. Chapter 720. Time passed little by little. When it was noon, the smell of meat came from afar. Along with it came another trump card. Some of the injured Tatar cavalrymen were sent back to the center of the battlefield. Brothers, I'm Gushan. I'm sure many of you know me. I was injured by an arrow and couldn't ride a horse, so I was sent to the mercenaries as a captive. A Tatar cavalryman on a horse shouted. Such a shout quickly caused a burst of discussion in the Tatar camp. That person is indeed Gushan. His hometown is not far from mine, so I know him. He is Gushan. He was originally with me. Even if he turned into ashes, I would still recognize him. I just didn't expect that when we left this morning, he couldn't get on a horse, but now he can ride a horse. Immediately, several Tatar cavalrymen took the initiative to testify, proving Gushan's true identity. After his identity was confirmed, Gushan's words were more credible. When he talked about his experience, everyone naturally chose to listen carefully. After listening to his story, they also knew what happened to him in the mercenaries. In Gushan's own words, although he was a captive, he was different from a captive. Since he and his injured companions came to the mercenaries, they were immediately surrounded by a group of medical officers called military doctors. Then, all kinds of examinations, all kinds of treatment, all kinds of medicine, and all kinds of methods were used. After the treatment, hot meat soup and flatbread were served in front of him. The people who surrounded him were also Mongolian men. Through the conversation, he knew that the Mongolian soldiers in front of him were not fake. Through the conversation, he gained a deeper understanding of the mercenary army system, and he also gained a deeper understanding of how the soldiers were treated. Gushan was a person who could speak. After he saw that many people were listening to him carefully, he bluntly announced that the treatment of soldiers was 10 taels of silver a month. Soldiers were 15 taels of silver a month. The so-called soldiers were the second-line troops with weaker fighting ability. The soldiers were naturally the first-line troops with tyrannical strength. When this treatment was announced, it immediately attracted the attention of the Tatar cavalrymen who were listening carefully. The Tatar cavalrymen were only paid 2 taels of silver a month. Of course, if there was a war, there would still be some extra benefits. For example, they could keep a portion of the things they looted. The military merits they obtained could also be exchanged for a portion of silver taels. But even so, on average, the amount of silver they received each month was still limited. It was far from being as generous as the salary of the mercenaries. Not to mention, according to what Gushan had heard, once the mercenaries were involved in a war, their rewards would only be greater. For example, if you killed an enemy on the battlefield, you could get a reward of 1 to 10 taels of silver. This also depended on who you killed. Hearing this, the Tatar cavalryman's eyes revealed excitement and even yearning. The cavalry here were all Tatar elites. In terms of combat ability, they were more powerful than the Tatar cavalry at the West River and the North Slope. All capable people were conceded. Things like military exploits were as easy as eating a meal in their hands. Who wouldn't be tempted when they heard that they could receive so many rewards for their military service? The so-called capable people needed a platform to display their abilities, and the mercenary group was obviously a very good platform to display their abilities. It made the hearts of the capable people yearn for it. Speaking of the treatment of the Mongol cavalrymen, although their ability to march and fight was very strong, due to the constraints of the environment, they did not seem to have much creativity other than fighting and hurting. Because of this, their treatment had always been very poor. It was even worse than the Baiming army, the original Nuzan tribe, and the Mongol tribe in Narcissus town. The price they paid was not proportional to the benefits they received. This made many of the Tatar cavalrymen resentful. But when they thought about how everyone was like this on the Mongolian grassland, they slowly balanced out. But balance did not mean that they had truly accepted it. They still wanted to prove themselves and improve their treatment. After all, with money, they could do many things. This was something that everyone knew. Why did the Mongol cavalrymen always like to plunder? It would not take long for them to think of attacking the Central Plains. Wasn't it because they were too poor? Everyone knew that the Central Plains was vast with abundant resources. The people there were also very rich. If they did not target them, who else would they target? Although many people would die in every war, compared to the benefits, the risk was worth it. But now they did not need to go out of the grassland to plunder others. They could also receive good treatment. This was equivalent to having benefits in front of them. How many people would not be tempted? How many people would be able to ignore it? At this time, it was not only the ordinary Tatar cavalrymen. Some of the Tatar centurions and Kiliarchs were also tempted. Gushan had just said that an ordinary soldier's monthly salary was at least 10 taels of silver. As a small general, they would receive even more. If they followed this treatment and worked in the mercenary army for a few years, wouldn't they have enough money to marry a wife, build a house, and buy sheep and horses? If they really had money and a happy and comfortable life, who would want to go to war and take risks? Gushan's appearance made many people have a better understanding of the mercenary army and yearn for it. In the following time, more Tatar cavalrymen like Gushan, who had been treated with minor injuries, were released. They came to the center of the two armies and began to help spread the benefits of the mercenary army. One person's words might not be credible, but what about 10 people, 100 people, or more? Not to mention that the original words were true, with so many people saying the same thing. Even if it was false, it would become true. As more and more of their original companions came forward to speak, gradually, no one doubted the truth of the matter. On the contrary, everyone's eyes were full of stars, imagining the various benefits after joining the mercenary army. Gushan and the others were sent out because they had received a certain promise from the mercenary army. For example, the so-called Mercenary Logistics Battalion Commander Beta Persei, who was in charge of receiving them, said that as long as they helped persuade the Tatar cavalrymen, once they chose to surrender, not only would they receive a reward of 100 taels of silver for their military service, but after their injuries were healed, their ability would be tested first, and they would be able to enter the Accord. Even if it was for themselves, Gushan and the others would go all out and do their best to praise the mercenary army to the best of their ability. Their efforts finally paid off. Under the extreme temptation of words, finally a bold Tatar cavalryman walked out of the camp and came to the center of the two armies, expressing his willingness to surrender to the mercenary army. His appearance was naturally welcomed by Gushan and the others. In the warm applause, the mercenary army also sent out 2 battalions of soldiers to welcome him. Immediately, a special person came forward to register. The officer in charge of the reception also praised the Tatar cavalryman for daring to be the first to come forward. He said that if this person performed well, he would be given more consideration for his promotion. With such a living example in front of them, the other Tatar cavalrymen finally couldn't help but take the initiative to stand out. They scrambled to be the first, as if they were afraid that all the benefits would be taken away by others if they were late. More and more Tatar cavalrymen chose to surrender. They put down their weapons, jumped off their horses, and joined the mercenary army. Because of this, the tension of the previous war slowly disappeared. So much so that the originally tense string was also relaxed. There are also examples of centurions and kiliarchs joining the mercenary army. In the main camp of the Tatar cavalry, Suhi stood at the entrance of a large tent. He looked at everything that was happening in front of him from afar and was speechless for a long time. There was no expression on his face. He couldn't tell if he was happy or disappointed. Sui's mood was indeed a bit complicated. You could say that he was happy. So many of his brothers had a way to live, so he was naturally happy. But at the same time, he was worried that the mercenary army would not treat his brothers well. Since they had surrendered, it was the same as fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. If all of this was fake, then what should he do? Under such a worried mood, Gushan, who had done his best to talk, crossed the line between the two armies and arrived in front of Suhi. This was deliberately requested by Suhi. He wanted to contact Gushan alone and use his experience to judge whether what Gushan said was true or false. Seeing that Gushan had arrived, he calmly turned around and walked into the large tent. He spat out a sentence, "Come with me." Gushan was naturally cautious and even a little nervous. After all, he was just an ordinary Tatar cavalryman. It was impossible for him to meet a general like Suhi who commanded tens of thousands of troops. But now they could actually meet alone. It was imaginable how his mentality had changed. As soon as he entered the tent, it was incomparably cold. So he turned his head and said casually, "Sit anywhere." "Thank you, General. I'm used to standing." Gushan was still very aware of his identity. He didn't sit down but stood respectfully at the side. So he saw Gushan's performance, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he sat down and asked casually, "Tell me everything you saw after going to the mercenary camp and the benefits they promised you. Remember, don't lie. If I find out, you'll never be able to walk out of this tent." There wasn't the slightest anger in his voice, and there wasn't even the slightest murderous intent. However, these words brought a lot of pressure to Gushan, so much so that he suddenly broke out in cold sweat. It also gave him a feeling that it was best not to lie in front of General Suhi. Otherwise, he would definitely lose his life here. Chapter 721. Yes, General, I will report truthfully, Gushan said very sincerely. Then he recounted everything that happened when he entered the mercenary camp in detail. He even told Beta Persei about the things that he promised him. "General, I didn't say a single lie. Everything I said is true. I also saw our mercenary Tatar soldiers in the previous battle in the barracks. Most of them were treated well. Although they were locked in military tents, they were not beaten, scolded, or reprimanded. They even had a fixed time to come out every day. And once some of them were willing to surrender, they would immediately be separated and receive better treatment. Even those soldiers who did not make a choice for the time being would be able to eat their fill for 3 meals and would not go hungry." Sui nodded from time to time as he listened carefully to Gushan's detailed account of everything he saw. He could feel that Gushan was not lying. He had interrupted several times and then asked the previous questions again. The answers he got were the same. There was no difference. He learned more about the mercenary army from Gushan's mouth. He also knew that his soldiers were doing well. He could finally rest assured. He slowly closed his eyes, then waved his hand and said, "Very good. Thank you for telling me so much. You can leave now." Gushan, who could leave, did not immediately move. Instead, he took the initiative to say, after struggling in his heart, "General, don't you choose to join the mercenary army? They are indeed treated well, and their mental outlook is not worse than our Tatar cavalry. Don't say any more. Otherwise, you will only force me to change my mind about not killing you. You can leave now." Although he did not say anything more, Suhi had already expressed his determination with practical actions. That is, others can surrender, but he will not. No matter what, he was a general who once commanded tens of thousands of cavalry. How could he choose to surrender in exchange for a new life? At this point, Suhi was about to get angry. By right, this should be the time for Gushan to leave. However, he still didn't move. Instead, after a moment of hesitation, he suddenly said, "General, the mercenaries hope to see you join them. They even promised you the opportunity to lead an army alone after you join them. He also said that if you don't go, young Master Hiraluo's life will be in danger." Listening to Gushan's noisy words, Suhi was about to get angry. Was his expression not clear and specific enough? Why was the other party still trying to persuade him? He had to show the other party some power. Just as he was about to punish Gushan, he suddenly heard the last sentence. When he heard Hiraluo's name, his originally closed eyes suddenly opened. "What did you say? If Harak is still alive, how is he now?" Suhi finally reacted, which made Gushan breathe a sigh of relief. Before coming, Beta Persei told him that if possible, he could help persuade Suhi. For this, he even wrote him a letter. But Beta Persei also said that this mission could be abandoned. After all, it was too dangerous. No one would blame him if he didn't complete it. Of course, if he completed it well, there would be additional rewards, and so on. On the way to see Suhi, Gushan thought a lot. In the end, he decided to give it a try. This was not only because of the generous rewards, but also because of a more important reason. He respected General Suhi very much and didn't want to see the general die because he didn't surrender. So he finally mustered up the courage to give it a try. Now, it seems that he finally made the right bet. Gushan happily took out the letter from his arms and handed it to Suhi. "General, this is a letter from the mercenary general. There should be the answer you want in it. Take a look." So he didn't hesitate to take the letter, then opened it and read it. He finally knew what happened at Shiha and the North Slope. It was as he expected and guessed. Whether it was the 5,000 Tatar cavalry at Shiha or the 10,000 Tatar cavalry at the North Slope, they were all defeated. The defeat was very thorough. General Gulang, who was in charge of the North Slope, was killed in the chaos. Harak, who led the 5,000 Shia cavalry, was lucky and was captured alive. Now he was in the hands of the mercenaries, who originally wanted to kill him. But if Suhi was willing to surrender, this person would not die. This was the promise of the mercenary leader, the great Ming dynasty's loyalty and courage. It also expressed the other party's importance to him. At the end of the letter, there was also Yang Qindong's handwriting. "General Suhi, I have long heard of your ability to command troops. I look forward to it. If you are willing to return, you will be put in an important position. The great Ming dynasty's loyalty and courage is a great promise." Just this line of words, in Suhi's eyes, was as heavy as 10,000 kilograms. It made Suhi feel touched. The fact that the other party was trying so hard to subdue him made him feel a little happy in his heart. A good bird chooses a good tree to nest in. Any capable person would want to find a wise master. Only in this way would they not bury their talents. Suhi also had a great dream in his heart. That was to rule the entire grassland like his predecessor, the greatest hero in his heart, Genghis Khan. Then, he would let the Mongolian cavalry conquer the world and achieve supreme hegemony. Unfortunately, this dream was completely lost because he followed Agadorji. This was a greedy person, a short-sighted person. As long as he could eat his fill, wear warm clothes, and have enough power, he would stop moving forward. If he followed such a person, he might be able to barely survive, but it was obviously impossible to achieve great things. If the other party did not promote him and put him in an important position, Suhi would have left long ago. He originally thought that he would not have the chance to fulfill his wish in this life, but now the opportunity was in front of him again. The Duke of Loyalty and Courage, the legendary war god, who could easily defeat Yesen, had extended an olive branch to him. How could he not be excited? But sometimes being excited was not enough. What really moved Suhi was that as long as he chose to surrender, he could save Haruwashin's life. This hit his heart, making him enter into a situation where he had no choice. Without Agadorji's attention and promotion, Suhi would not be where he was today. In order to repay the favor, he risked his life to let the other party leave. Logically speaking, he had already repaid the favor. But this didn't seem to be enough. He didn't just want to call it even, he also wanted the other party to owe him a favor. This way, no matter who talked about this matter in the future, they wouldn't blame him anymore. And if he could save Haru Ruashian, it would be equivalent to making Agadorji owe him a big favor. That would be perfect. Is Haru Ruashian still alive? I want to see him before making a decision. Although Suhi was already moved, he did not show it. Instead, he said very calmly, "Yes, I will pass on the general's request to the mercenary general. You just have to wait for the news." Gushan naturally could not make any promises. He also did not have the authority to do so. All he could do was to pass on the original words. "Okay, I will give us 2 days. If we still do not see Haru Ruashian in 2 days, then you are deceiving me. At that time, even if I have to risk my life, I will fight you to the end." Sui's voice became cold, releasing a murderous aura. Yes, Gushan was affected. After hurriedly agreeing, he left the tent. Not long after, this news was passed back to the mercenary camp. Regarding Suhi's request, the officers below had different opinions. Someone suggested that Haru Ruashian could not be handed over. This person had previously had unfavorable thoughts towards the 6th young master, and even fought a big battle at the short stone pile. He was also Agadorji's only son. This person could not be let go and should be killed. Moreover, the other party was not surrounded. The news said that at least 6,000 Tatar cavalry had escaped. It was hard to guarantee that they would not become a threat in the future. As soon as this idea was put forward, it received a lot of support. Everyone thought that it was not worth it to let go of Haru Ruochu for the sake of Suhi, a loser. With so many people supporting this idea, the voices of quarreling in the tent quickly disappeared. After reaching a consensus, everyone's eyes fell on Yang Chendong, who had been sitting at the head of the tent without speaking. 1,000 soldiers are easy to obtain, but a general is difficult to find. You must have all heard of it. With a smile on his face, Yang Chendong's eyes swept across the faces of the officers in the tent. Sui's ability is obvious to all of you. Let me ask everyone a question. In front of the mercenaries, if you were to command the Tatar cavalry, can you guarantee that you would do better than Suhi? Yang Chendong didn't go to talk about any great principles. Instead, he used facts to speak. Just a question was thrown out, and the tent immediately became silent. They asked themselves, unless they knew all of the 6th young master's plans, and if they worked together, they might have a chance of winning. Otherwise, they would not be able to win this battle. It could be said that the moment the Tatar cavalry became enemies with the mercenaries, they had already lost. Haha, I know that many of you look down on the general of a defeated army. But what I want to say is that defeat is not the fault of the general. Whoever commands this army will have the same result. So why should you look down on Suhi? As for defeats, most of you have experienced them before, right? When have I ever looked at you in a different light? When this question was asked, many of the faces in the tent became red. This was especially true for Yella and Lu Dai, who were the commander of the Jurchen cavalry division. Their faces were flushed red. Weren't they the general of a defeated army? It was because of their ability that they were chosen by Yang Chendong and placed in an important position. Chapter 722. Even if he was such a person, what qualifications did he have to look down on others? Everyone stopped talking. Yang Chendong smiled and said, "As for Haraluo, a dead person has no value. If we can use a person who is already dead in our eyes in exchange for Suhi's sincere surrender, is worth it. Don't you think so?" This time, no one said anything. This was not only because Yang Chendong's prestige was too high, to the point that his words carried enormous weight. More importantly, what he said was indeed very reasonable, making it difficult for everyone to find a place to refute. Because Yang Chendong expressed his opinion, the matter was settled. He immediately let the scouts return to the first city and bring Haraluo to the battlefield. Yang Chendong also made the decision to go to the Tatar cavalry army to see Su He personally. Naturally, some people showed concerns about this decision, but Yang Chendong said that he had confidence in the Black Knights. In addition, the mercenaries could press to the front line. Once they found that the situation was not right, they could immediately launch a general attack. Finally, the other officers could not say anything. The scout left quickly and returned quickly as well. After only a day and a half, Haraluo was brought in front of Yang Chendong. Compared to the last time they met, this person was slightly embarrassed. It should be because he had not washed his face for a few days. He gave people the feeling that he was very listless. Come, fetch water for him to wash his face, and get him a set of clean clothes to change into. Yang Chendong just casually glanced at Haraluo, then looked away. If such a small person was not still useful now, perhaps he would not take a second look at him in his life. Haraluo was taken away. When he followed Yang Chendong and the 100 or so black-clad knights out of the mercenary camp, it was as if he had changed into a different person. He was much more energetic. Although his appearance had recovered a lot, it could still be seen from his constantly moving eyes that he was still very afraid at this moment. After becoming a captive, he no longer knew what his future path was. He didn't even know when he would die. Under this shadow, he didn't dare to say anything. Once he noticed that the surrounding black-clad soldiers were looking at him, he tried his best to put on a flattering smile to curry favor. To Haraluo's horror, he was surprised to find that after leaving the mercenary camp, they were actually heading towards the Tatar army. He carefully looked at the Black Knights beside him. There were only a little more than 100 of them. He really couldn't understand. Would such a small number of people really dare to bring him to the Tatar cavalry's camp? Could this be the so-called boldness of the skilled? While thinking, Yang Chendong led more than 100 Black Knights through the ceasefire battlefield, heading straight for the Tatar camp. Along the way, they saw many Tatar cavalry who were hesitating whether to surrender or not. When they saw Yang Chendong and the 100 Black Knights, their eyes were also filled with shock and confusion. In front of the largest tent in the Tatar cavalry's camp, Su He stood to welcome them. When he saw the Black Knights coming from afar and Haraluo in the group, his face didn't change, but his heart was really shocked. The mercenaries really did send Haraluo over. They really kept their word. Everyone, since you are here, why don't you take a seat in the main tent? In the spirit of hospitality, and also wanted to test the other party, Su He made an invitation. Of course, he also wanted to test them. He wanted to see if the mercenaries were really so bold, and if they had the courage to do so. Of course, the one who answered him was Yang Chendong, riding the white dragon horse at the head of the group. Along the way, he didn't panic, as if he was walking in his own camp. He didn't show the slightest sign of weakness. On the contrary, when he came in front of Su He, his eyes were still constantly looking at this person, as if he was looking at a treasure. Yang Chendong, who agreed, dismounted from his horse and led Beta Persei and Xiao Vi, as well as Ba Daojiang and Peng Yu, who were escorting Haraluo, and strode into the tent. As soon as they entered the tent, they could see that both sides of the tent were filled with executioners holding swords and sabers. There were about 50 of them. They were glaring angrily at Yang Chendong and the others who came in. It was as if they would chop the intruders into minced meat at the slightest command. You are cheating. How dare you? After Beta Persei and Xiao Vi saw the situation in front of them, they stood on the left and right respectively and pulled out their sabers. Their eyes were filled with anger and killing intent. On the other hand, Yang Chendong wasn't confused by the scene in front of him. Instead, he smiled and looked at Su He, who had already walked to the front and was 3 meters away from him. He asked, "Is this how you treat your guests?" At this time, Yang Chendong not only showed that he wasn't afraid, but in fact, he really wasn't. Haraluo was still in his hands and hadn't been handed over to the other party yet. Just based on this, the other party didn't dare to act rashly. According to his analysis, the reason why they put on such a posture was just to scare him. While Yang Chendong was speaking, Badao Jiang and Peng Yu also tightened their grip on the sabers in their hands. The sabers were placed on Haraluo's neck. It seemed that this movement would draw blood, causing Hilaro to cry out in alarm. Suhi, don't act rashly, don't act rashly. Instead of scaring the others, Suhi scared his own people. There was a trace of disappointment in his eyes. Then he waved his hand, and the 50 axemen took a step back in unison, maintaining a safe distance from Yang Chendong and the others. After expressing a certain amount of goodwill, Suhi looked at Yang Chendong and asked, "Can you let them go now?" Logically speaking, the danger wasn't over yet. Letting them go now was equivalent to putting themselves in danger. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't agree so easily. However, Yang Chendong wasn't an ordinary person. 50 axemen wasn't a small number, but it wasn't a big deal in his eyes. The 4 men he brought with him could each fight against 10 men, and his own strength was unfathomable. Outside the tent, Dao Xiao was leading more than 100 Black Knights. It was impossible for them to fend off an army of 10,000, but it would not be a problem for them to fend them off for a while. Once chaos broke out here, the mercenaries outside would charge in. These were the reasons why he was so confident. Because of this, after hearing Sui's question, Yang Chendong smiled. "Of course we can let them go. I originally wanted to give them to you. Come, let young Master Hilaro go." Badeo Jiang and Peng Yu were stunned for a moment. However, this was the 6th young master's order. Although the 2 of them were reluctant, they still put down their sabers and pushed Hilaro to Suhi's side. This action also gave Suhi a fright. What he said just now was just to test the waters. If the other party didn't let him go, he would definitely mock them and point out that the mercenaries were also as timid as mice. He could use this opportunity to suppress the other party's momentum. But now, the other party really let them go. Just this magnanimity and boldness made him speechless. So he didn't know what to say. Hilaro, who was released, finally regained his freedom. He suddenly shouted, "General Su, quickly capture these people. Their status isn't low. We can threaten them to make the mercenaries pay the price." Along the way, although he didn't know Yang Chendong's true identity, he had met him twice. In addition, when he left the mercenaries' camp, he could see that many people looked at Yang Chendong with very respectful gazes. Just based on this, he guessed that this person's status wasn't ordinary. Thus, he shouted loudly. At this moment, Hilaro's style of being an ingrate was incisively and vividly displayed. These words also made the surrounding 50 executioners move. Just now, the other party had hostages in their hands, so they didn't dare to act rashly. But now, the enemy had nothing, so they didn't put him in their eyes. Hilaro's shout also made Beta Persei, Chio V, and the other 2 become very nervous. The 4 of them even involuntarily touched their waists. They all came with pistols. If the situation goes out of control, they will pull out their guns and kill. However, Yang Chendong still didn't panic. Instead, he looked at Su He and smiled, as if to tell everyone that he was not an enemy, but a friend. So he was also one of the calmer people. At least he didn't shout, nor did he have the intention to order the arrest. Instead, he looked at Yang Chendong, his eyes full of curiosity. "But I don't know who you are." Seeing Yang Chendong's calmness, and also seeing that this person was the leader of the Black Knights, He was indeed interested. This person's boldness and courage were something he had never seen in his life. With this alone, this person was worthy of respect. "What? General Su, you really don't know who I am? Well, I will tell you, listen carefully. I am the Great Ming's loyal duke, the one you call the War God." With a smile still on his face, Yang Chendong revealed his identity word by word. Loyal Duke? War God. The moment the name was said, not only Su He, but also the 50 executioners involuntarily took a step back, their faces showing a look of horror. What was the meaning of a person's name? The shadow of a tree was perfectly interpreted at this time. After a brief panic, everyone carefully looked at Yang Chendong. After all, it wasn't the first time they heard the name of the War God, but it was rumored that this person had 3 heads and 6 arms and was 3 feet tall. But now, looking at him, he was the same as them, but younger and more handsome. You are the War God?" Sui asked in disbelief. "It's true, and when you go to the mercenary army in the future, you will naturally know that I am not lying." Yang Chendong said with a smile, almost patting his chest and taking out his ID card as proof. Chapter 723. It really was the war god. So he was truly excited. The true men of the grasslands all worshipped heroes. Without a doubt, the war god who could defeat the Walla's leader, Yes Hin, naturally belonged to the category of heroes. In the past, they had only heard of his name. Now that they had finally seen him in person, how could they not be excited? Not to mention, the war god was now the commander of the mercenaries. He could even decide the life and death of many of them. Of course, what made Suhi even more excited was that this person actually came to her in person, and he just wanted to recruit her. At that moment, he felt that he was extremely valued. That feeling was very good and made him feel very comfortable. Haraluo was also frightened by the war god's name, but soon his eyes shone with excitement. This was the war god, someone who even Yes Hin was afraid of. If he could capture this person and give him to Yes Hin, he would definitely be able to exchange for a lot of good things. At that time, wouldn't he gain both fame and fortune? His faction would also have a great opportunity to develop. He would also be regarded as a hero by the Grasslands warriors. Thinking about the various benefits he could obtain, Haraluo couldn't suppress the excitement in his heart. He shouted at the executioners in the tent, "What are you all standing there for? Hurry up and capture him. This is a great contribution." His voice was shouted out, and the crowd of executioners were also moved. But no one moved. Instead, they all looked at Suhi. Suhi was the commander here. They could only listen to his orders. Seeing that no one moved and instead looked at Suhi, Haraluo was unhappy. He said with a dark face, "Did you not hear what I said? Let me tell you, if you don't listen, I will hand you over to my father. At that time, even Suhi won't be able to protect you." Poor Haraluo, he still didn't know that his father had already escaped with 3,000 cavalry. He thought that no one could stop him from doing anything with his father's name. Haraluo had exposed his true face. This made Suhi very unhappy. The war god was willing to take the risk alone. This was a display of courage and wisdom, but how could it not be that he trusted himself? Although he also wanted to defeat the battle god, that would bring him both fame and fortune. However, if he wanted to defeat them, he would have to defeat them fair and square on the battlefield. He would not have to resort to petty tricks and use the other party's trust to make a move. If he did that, he would not be a hero. In fact, he would be worse than a coward. That's enough. Suddenly, Suhi roared and stopped Haraluo's shouting. He then cupped his fists and said to Yang Chendong, "So it's the battle god. Sorry for the disrespect." Hee. Yang Chendong was very satisfied with Suhi's performance. The fact that the other party didn't make a move was enough to prove that he was a straightforward and upright man. Such a person was always worthy of others' trust. He smiled and said, "It's fine. I've admired General Su's talent for a long time. How about it? You gave me the conditions to send Haraluo back. Not only did I send him back, but I also appeared here personally. Does this count as showing enough sincerity?" He took the opportunity to state his purpose. These words caused Suhi's face to turn red. If he had only wanted to test the sincerity of the mercenaries before, the other party's performance was too good. It was so good that he had nothing to say. As a man, once a promise is made, even 4 horses cannot go back on it. Suhi was moved by Yang Chendong's sincerity. He immediately cupped his fists and said, "Battle god, Suhi, am very difficult to convince others, but I truly submit to you. From now on, Suhi is willing to serve by your side. Please accept me." As he spoke, he knelt on the ground. Suhi finally lowered his head. Good. Yang Chendong was naturally overjoyed. He laughed and took a few steps forward. He came in front of Suhi and reached out to help him up. Then the monarch and minister looked at each other and smiled. Everything was understood without words. Suhi expressed his intention to surrender. This scared Haraluo. Instead of his overbearing attitude, he stood obediently at the side like a cat. When he noticed Yang Chendong's gaze, he even tried his best to squeeze out a smile. He didn't even think about how he wanted to kill Yang Chendong just now. Yang Chendong did not even spare him a second glance. Such a person was not worthy of his attention. Yang Shandong did not even spare him a second glance. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted Su He to join the mercenaries, this person would have died countless times. Yang Shandong could ignore Hilaruo, but Su He couldn't. With the intention of returning the favor, he first glanced at Hilaruo, then at Yang Shandong and said, "War God, this subordinate has a presumptuous request, but I don't know if I can say it." "There's no harm in saying it," Yang Shandong said very generously. "This subordinate wants to send Hilaruo away. If other Tatar cavalry are willing to follow, please don't stop them. As for the rest, this subordinate will try my best to persuade them to work for the mercenaries. Please allow it." This was equivalent to the last condition. It was also Su He's into some things. Since he had already done so many things, there was no harm in doing one more. Yang Shandong immediately nodded and said, "Okay, I promise you." "Thank you, War God." Sui's attitude was already very respectful. After he finally made his choice, he relaxed a lot. In front of the big tent, more than 100 black-clad cavalry rode on horses. They wore black iron masks, so people couldn't see their expressions at all. However, a solemn, murderous aura leaked out uncontrollably. The Tatar cavalry who wanted to watch could only watch from afar. Time passed by minute. The sixth young master still hadn't come out. Fortunately, there were no sounds of fighting coming out of the big tent. But before there was a result, all the black-clad cavalry maintained their best state. They looked like they would pull out their swords and open fire once the order was given. In fact, they didn't just pull out their swords. Therefore, the black-clad cavalry carried a Type 95 on their back. Everyone's body was full of magazines. Even the quiver was full of grenades. This was just in case. Just when the tension was so high that a random sound could lead to a chaotic battle, the curtain of the big tent was finally lifted from the inside. Yang Shandong, wearing a red cloak, strode out. Beside Yang Shandong were Beta Persei, Chiu V, and the others. Compared to when he went in, there was one more person beside him, Su He. It could be seen that the other party intentionally stood behind Yang Shandong, and he even showed a very respectful look. After walking out, Yang Shandong first nodded lightly to Dao Xiao and the other guards to show that he was fine. Then, he turned to look at Su He and said, "You may begin." "Yes." Su He cupped his fists and answered. Then, he strode away from Yang Shandong's side and walked to a place about 10 meters away from the big tent. Then, he jumped onto a war horse and shouted from above, "Everyone pay attention. Gather here. This general has an important matter to announce." At this time, the Tatar camp had experienced a few battles. After sending away all the wounded and a portion of people who had chosen to surrender, there were still about 7,000 people in the camp. With so many people gathered together, the momentum was still very great. Fortunately, they were worthy of being called an elite army. Even when they gathered, they were very orderly. No one panicked. Everyone stood in an orderly manner, either close or far away. However, their eyes were all on Su He, waiting for the general's next order. After about the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the camp was once again safe. There were already very few people who continued to walk around. Su He's shout finally rang out, and that resounding voice also reached the ears of every soldier. "I am Su He. I have already made the decision to surrender and join the mercenary army. Brothers, if you believe in me, then please join me for a brand new beginning." The crowd was silent at first, but then there was a deafening shout. It was clear that this decision was very popular with the soldiers. Many people were already moved, but because there were still many people who had not made a choice, they could not force themselves to stand out. Thus, they endured it. Now that even the general had decided to surrender to the mercenary army, they finally had nothing to worry about. The shouts came one after another, and it took a while for them to gradually calm down. Sui's voice continued to ring out. "Young Master Haruo has already been sent back. If anyone is willing to follow young Master, I will not stop or oppose. You can leave with him. Those who do not wish to join the mercenary army can also leave with young Master first. When you feel that it is safe or the time is ripe, You can leave on your own. From now on, everyone will go their separate ways. However, if one day we meet on the battlefield, we will definitely not be lenient. I hope that everyone can understand, and I also hope that those who leave will take care of themselves." He had given everyone another choice. He had spoken very gently at the beginning, but at the end, he had said such a sentence, which was full of threat. When these words entered the ears of the army, it indeed caused the faces of those who had ulterior motives to tighten. They had no choice but to think about it. If they really left, where would they go in the future? Moreover, the strength of the mercenary army was so strong. If they were to become enemies, would they be able to win? To put it simply, would they have a chance to survive? Yang Qindong heard Su He's words and laughed in his heart. This person really did have some tricks up his sleeve. It was clearly a threat, but he used such a method to make it seem as if he was thinking for everyone. This was indeed a talent. At this point, Yang Qindong was no longer worried about the choice of the Tatar cavalry. With Su He, this powerful general, he would definitely be satisfied with the result. In order to not create pressure for the other party and be able to do things freely, Yang Qindong left with more than 100 black armored cavalry. Chapter 724. Not long after Yang Qindong left, Har also left the Tatar camp. Nearly 1,000 Tatar cavalrymen left with him. About 200 of them had received Lord Agar Dorj's kindness, and they were following the young master to repay his kindness. As for the rest, they did not want to join the Han army, or they were simply tired of war. Sui kept his word and did not make things difficult for them. Instead, he allowed them to take their war horses and weapons and leave the camp. However, if one day these people could not continue and wanted to return, they would have to start all over again. A day later, Suhi brought about 6,000 Tatar cavalrymen and joined the mercenary army. At this point, the battle had come to an end. After several bloody battles, 8,000 of the 45,000 Tatar cavalrymen were killed and nearly 20,000 were wounded. Nearly 7,000 managed to escape, and in the end, more than 10,000 were captured or surrendered. On the other hand, the mercenary army had about 2,500 people who died or were seriously injured and could not return to the army. There were still more than 2,000 lightly wounded soldiers left behind. This was a great victory for them, no matter how one looked at it. Yang Qindong did not go back on his word and allowed his 4 regiments to replenish the soldiers from the captives and surrendered soldiers. After this was done, he selected some elite soldiers from the remaining Tatar cavalrymen to form a new Tatar cavalry regiment. The regiment commander was Su He, and the number of soldiers was the same as the Nuzin cavalry regiment, 3,000. As for the remaining soldiers, they were incorporated into the newly expanded logistics regiment to replenish the soldiers. First city. News of the battle outside continued to pour into the city. The biggest change was that one could see captured Tatar cavalrymen and injured Tatar cavalrymen being sent into the city almost every day. Every time they appeared, the people in the city would talk about it. Although the citizens of the city weren't very sure about the number of mercenaries, they knew that there were about 10,000 to less than 20,000 mercenaries. Facing 45,000 elite Tatar cavalrymen with less than 20,000 people, many people were worried at the beginning. After all, the difference in strength was too great. Even if some people had seen the mercenaries' training methods, they still did not think that it would be easy for them to win. However, just as most people were not optimistic about their chances, reports of victory were sent into the city again and again. Under intentional propaganda, the more than 10,000 people in the city were clearly aware of the situation at the front lines, as well as how much the mercenaries had obtained in each battle. Seeing that they had won one battle after another, the people in the city were encouraged. They had more confidence in the mercenaries and were more determined to live in the city. Of course, there were 2 sides to everything. Some people were happy while others were unhappy. For example, some of the grassland youths in the city who wanted to join the mercenary army. They thought that if the front line was tight, they would have a chance to quickly rise and become a member of the mercenary army. However, news of victory kept coming in, especially when a large number of captives and wounded were sent into the city and passed through the streets in front of them. They couldn't help but start to worry. With so many captives, would the mercenaries choose to conscript? Would they still have a chance to join the army and create a better future? Amidst such worries, even better news came. Agar Dorj escaped, and the Tatar army was defeated. General Su he finally chose to surrender and join the mercenary army. The beginning city was safe. It was safe. When this news spread to the city, many people went to the streets to celebrate. Only those ambitious young men who wanted to join the army were missing. They were afraid that they had no hope. After understanding the treatment of the mercenaries, the thing they yearned for the most was to join this army. At the same time, they could also earn a better tomorrow for themselves. After discussing, they gathered together and decided in private that when the god of war returned from the front line, they would jointly request to join the mercenary army and ask the god of war to give them an explanation and a chance. Because so many people gathered, such a matter could not be hidden from the members of the security bureau in the city. At first, they thought that something big was going to happen. However, after understanding the matter, they did not know whether to laugh or cry. In the end, they reported the matter to the director of the security bureau in the beginning city, who was also in charge of intelligence in the grassland, Feng Liang. Feng Liang was one of the old people in the security bureau. When it was first established, he was chosen by the director, Yang San, and transferred to his command. Facts also proved that Director Yang San's judgment of people was still very accurate. Feng Liang withstood strict training, and after becoming an official member, he performed well and completed several difficult jobs in succession. Finally, he became a marquis and the person in charge of the security bureau in the grassland. This time, the beginning city was newly built, so it naturally needed some elite soldiers to assist. Feng Liang came here again and was responsible for the intelligence and security work in the city. He had also spent a lot of time walking through the streets and alleys of the beginning city. He knew the situation and terrain of the city like the back of his hand. Under Feng Liang's efforts, the security bureau in the city was successfully established. Its members were scattered all over the city to ensure that no matter what happened, no one would be able to escape their eyes. This time, so many young and strong grassland men suddenly gathered together. How could they escape his eyes and ears? He hurriedly sent people to inquire about and understand the situation. In the end, he got such a result, which made him feel like he did not know what to say. Logically speaking, it was a good thing that the young man wanted to join the army. At least it proved that the army was popular. This was what many forces and armies wanted to see. However, the mercenary army paid attention to the elite route of a strong army. The sixth young master personally said that he did not ask for the number of mercenaries. He only needed them to have enough combat power. Only in this way would the treatment of soldiers be higher, and they would be more flexible and mobile in the war. As a result, the pressure on the logistical support would also be much less. The route of a strong army had proven its feasibility with facts. Since the establishment of the mercenary army, which time did they not win with fewer people? It was also because of the small number of troops that they were more flexible and mobile when they fought the war. Feng Liang, who understood this policy very well, could understand the feelings of these young and strong grassland men. He could also feel the benefits of the sixth young master's policy. For a moment, he was caught in a dilemma. Since he knew what the request of these young and strong men was, there was no need to let them meet the sixth young master. This kind of small matter could be solved by him. How about this? Choose a few representatives from these young men who want to join the army. I will meet them alone. After some consideration, Feng Liang came up with a solution. That was to use the militia to solve the problem at hand. This way, they would not need to take up the quota and resources of the mercenary army. It should be the best of both worlds. All they needed to do was to pay a certain amount of silver every month. In order to build an intelligence network, the thing that the security bureau did not lack the least was silver. This amount of silver was still something they could solve. Feng Liang made a decision. He even imitated the model of establishing the militia and reserve in Chichen City. This solution was indeed effective. After meeting the representatives in private, the two sides reached an agreement to allow these men to enter the ranks of the militia of the first city. As long as they had the opportunity to pass the assessment, they would be able to enter the regular frontline combat forces. Before that, what they needed to do was to be responsible for the security in the beginning city. Once they found any suspicious people, they could keep an eye on them. If necessary, they could inform the army in the city and cooperate with them to suppress the enemy. After doing this, not only could they get a reasonable name for law enforcement, but more importantly, they could also get some silver every month. It was tentatively set at 2 taels of silver every month. There would be an additional reward for meritorious service. 2 taels of silver was naturally nothing in front of the regular mercenary army. However, for ordinary people, it was already an income. At this moment, both sides were very satisfied. A gathering of people that needed to trouble Yang Chundong was declared over before it happened. What was even more unexpected was that it did not take long for these grassland men, who were persuaded by Feng Liang to join the militia, to really make a great contribution. Yang Chundong, who had safely returned to the city, did not know about everything that Feng Liang had done in private. However, these things would be formed into a secret document and sent to him for review. However, no one knew whether he would value it or not. For example, Yang Chundong did not pay attention to the matter reported by Feng Liang. Instead, he focused on the eastern area of the beginning city. The scouts had sent back news that the 3 divisions of the Lungfeng Division were already on their way to transport the goods from Qiqian City that had just been received from Seatown. They would be able to rush back to the beginning city in at most 2 days. The previous battle was just to establish his prestige and to stabilize his foothold. Now, it seemed that everything was going smoothly. After this battle, not only did he show his prestige, but he also strengthened the army. This also gave Yang Chundong more confidence. Whether it was to defend the city or to fight, he also had more choices. However, if one wanted to conquer a place, war was only one of the methods. Another important method was economic occupation. As long as one controlled the economy of a place, it was equivalent to controlling its artery. Only then would one's influence be more far-reaching and one would be more powerful. Among the goods transported by the 3 divisions of the Lungfeng Division, there were many goods that were hard currencies. This was also a good opportunity to strengthen the economic strength of the beginning city again. This was also something that Yang Chundong valued very much. Therefore, on the morning of the 3rd day, when the 3 divisions of the Lungfeng Division escorted more than 500 carriages and appeared outside the city, he personally went up to greet them. While thanking them for their hard work, he also listened to the work reports from Division Commander Wu Sheng and Political Commissar Chen Bo. Chapter 725. Ever since they left the first city and headed to the new Aragon city, they had openly raised the banner of the mercenary army. At the same time, they attracted the attention of the Baiming guards. Then at the downstream of the Songhua River, outside the Jinzhou left guard, they had a big battle with the 3,000 cavalrymen of the Baiming guards and won a great victory. They had made a great contribution in this battle, and because of this, they gained the name of the mercenary army. The Baiming guards became more honest, and a logistics route that belonged to the mercenary army was opened up. On the way back from Seatown to pick up the goods, there were no more Ming army soldiers to make things difficult for them. There were only some scouts following them from afar, inquiring about their situation. Good. Hearing that he had established his prestige with just 1 battle, Yang Chundong was naturally satisfied. The Ming army was mostly made up of Han people. This was his route. If he could avoid hurting them, it would be best not to hurt them. As long as the other party was honest, he did not mind creating a peaceful border for them. As for who wanted to attack the Han people, he would take care of it. Of course, if the Ming army was smart, things would naturally develop normally. If they wanted to make things difficult for the mercenaries, he would not introduce them to teach them a lesson. He would let them know who they could not afford to offend and who they could not have any ideas about. The 3 divisions of Lungfeng had returned. They escorted more than 500 carriages of various sizes and a large number of goods. Since these were things that Yang Qindong needed, Crimson City would naturally provide them with all their strength. There were food, drinks, clothes, and all kinds of things. It could be said that they had everything. Not only did they bring a lot of goods this time, it was enough to make the first city a commercial city on the grasslands. At the same time, there was also a talent who came with the army. His surname was Yu, and his name was Mian. His father was the first city lord of Crimson City, Lord Yuqian. Yu Mian had a reputation in history, and his abilities were not ordinary. It was just that Yang Qindong did not appear, and in the end, Yu Qian ended up being beheaded. As his son, it was natural that he would not have a good ending. Now, things are different. Yu Qian was under the protection of Yang Qindong, and he had even handed over the management of such an important headquarters city to him. Naturally, his son would be able to do things much more smoothly. Yu Mian's arrival was not because his father, Yu Qian, wanted him to make his presence known. In fact, Yu Mian was already participating in the management of Crimson City. As the saying goes, one does not need to rely on one's own talents. Yu Qian was an upright gentleman. As long as he believed that something was right, he would not care about the opinions of others. Since his son was capable, why couldn't he be put in an important position? Yu Mian, who already had an official position in Crimson City and had begun to participate in the management, was summoned to Origin City after being recommended. This was Yang Qindong's order. Such a large city always needed someone to manage it, especially when it was just built. It could be said that there were a lot of things to do. If the person who came was not capable, wouldn't it be a waste of his energy? Finding a suitable city lord was a problem that Yang Qindong had been thinking about. He handed the matter of the candidates to Crimson City and asked them to report it. Among them was Yu Mian's name. In the end, he became the person that Yang Qindong wanted. When he saw Yu Mian, it was at the Yang residence in Origin City. The largest residence in this city was Yang Qindong's residence. In the pavilion in the back garden, Yang Qindong met Yu Mian, who was in his early 30s. The reason why he chose this place was to show his closeness. Only those who were chosen by Yang Qindong would be able to appear in such a private occasion. On the other hand, if it was someone unfamiliar, they could only meet in the living room. Yu Mian greets the sixth young master. After being brought to the back garden by Beta Persei, Yu Mian became excited when he saw the back of Yang Qindong, who was drinking tea alone from afar. He was still far away, but he had already bowed respectfully. "Aha, come, have a seat." Yang Qindong laughed without even turning his head. Then, he waved his hand and greeted Yu Mian casually. The more casual he was with you, the more he expressed his trust in you. Yu Mian naturally walked to Yang Qindong's side with a look of fear and trepidation. Then, he nervously and carefully sat on the empty chair opposite him. One shouldn't think that Yu Mian's performance was exaggerated. But for those who lived in Crimson City, there was no one who didn't know Yang Qindong and the sixth young master. For example, Yu Qian was the first to be kidnapped, so he naturally had a conflict in his heart. Coupled with his feelings for the great Ming dynasty, it was basically impossible for him to work for other forces. Fortunately, Yang Qindong had never forced him. Otherwise, given Yu Qian's unyielding character, it would not be strange for him to commit suicide. He seemed to know what kind of person Yu Qian was, what kind of nature he had, and what kind of character he had. From the beginning, Yang Qindong did not intend to use force. He just let Yu Qian wander around the city. Then, under the influence of what he saw and heard, the environment really changed Yu Qian's mind. When he saw that Yang Qindong really wanted to change the people's lives, enrich the country and strengthen the people, and even create a dynasty that was more powerful than the Great Ming dynasty, his thoughts also changed little by little. During the day, he walked on the streets and observed his surroundings. He felt the vitality in Crimson City and the sincere and brilliant smiles on the faces of the people. At night, he tossed and turned in bed, unable to fall asleep. He thought about what kind of impact the development of Crimson City would have on the Great Ming dynasty and whether the development of such a city would be good or bad. Rather than saying that Yu Qian was loyal to the emperor of the Great Ming dynasty, It was better to say that he was loyal to the people of the great Ming dynasty. By the same logic, he would help whoever could give the people a better life. After observing for many days, he confirmed that the development of Crimson City was for the good of the people. It could let them live a better life, obtain more respect, and obtain more fairness. He was surprised to find that this was not the life he wanted, the life and world he wanted, the life he had been pursuing all this time. In the end, reality defeated him and changed Yuqian. He finally decided to use his own ability to do something for the city. Then, he was appointed to an important position and became the lord of a city. Facts also proved that he was indeed capable, not only in military matters, but also in the people's lives. After he was given great power, his performance would only improve. Facts further proved that Yang Qindong was right to put Yu Qian in an important position. Under his guidance, Crimson City entered an era of rapid development. With Yang Qindong's help in various aspects, it quickly became the largest city in the Yang dynasty. It created countless wealth for the development of the entire Yang dynasty and laid a solid foundation. Yu Qian was contributing to the development of Crimson City. Of course, his family was duty-bound as well. At this time, Yu Mian also became an official and became a capable subordinate under his father. He was a capable assistant. His performance was also remarkable. In the end, he came to the first city and became the person personally appointed by Yang Qindong. At this time, Yu Mian sighed with emotion about his experience. He could also feel the great responsibility on his shoulders. He had even begun to outline the future development plan of the first city in his heart. He was thinking that he must build the first city into the second Crimson City and continue its glory. Compared to Yu Mian's nervousness and excitement, Yang Qindong was very calm. He did not talk about business right away. Instead, he casually asked about the matters in Crimson City, especially if the higher-ups and officials could fulfill their duties. Yu Mian, don't be nervous. Just say whatever you want to say. You also know that I'm not in Crimson City all year round, so I don't know much about it. And where there are people, there will be fights. I know this better than you. If you say that your father is the city lord, no one will object to what he says and does, then I don't believe it. With a smile on his face, Yang Qindong directly sealed off the path of retreat, as if saying, I can see that your father is an honest man, so I hope that you're also an honest man. If there's anything you want to say, then say it to me. Originally, he wanted to sing praises for Crimson City, but suddenly, after Yang Qindong said this, Yu Mian knew that he could hold back those words in his stomach. But at the same time, he was very happy that the sixth young master was so considerate of him. Such a person was worthy of others' loyalty. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he thought for a while before saying, Sixth young master, just as you said, there will be fights where there are people. The higher-ups in Crimson City are indeed not a tight group. There are some people who have doubts about my father's decisions. But all in all, this is just a difference in opinion and a desire for power. At least up to now, no one has caused any major trouble. After all, with Sixth Young Master's reputation and the Security Bureau's people secretly watching, as well as the Special Inspector Bureau's Lord Shun Yu's guarantee on the surface, everything is still peaceful. Yu Mian was being careful and polite, and what he reported was all good news. However, Yang Qindong was not an ordinary person. He could still hear the hidden meaning in his words. Even if everything was peaceful now, it was unknown what would happen in the future. What's going on? Tell me the details. This time, Yang Qindong had already put away his smile, and his expression became much more serious. If he didn't do this, he was afraid that it wouldn't be enough to make Yu Mian tell the truth. It's fine. Yu Mian seemed to want to say something, but in the end, he shut his mouth. And this had already angered Yang Qindong. Then, all right, you can rest for now. In a few days, there will be a carriage that will go to Sea Town to pick up supplies. You can go back to Crimson City with the carriage. After saying this, Yang Qindong slowly stood up. Since Yu Mian didn't want to tell him the truth, he would let him go back. There was no need for him to stay by his side if he couldn't confide in him, let alone hand over such an important city like the first city to him. Chapter 726. He actually asked him to go back. This was obviously a sign of anger. Yu Mian was frightened at this moment. When he came, many people's eyes were red with jealousy. His father had high hopes for him, hoping that he would be able to gain a foothold in the origin city and create a glory similar to the Crimson City. Even when he left, he patted his chest and almost made a military order. It could be said that his family had given him too much hope for his arrival. But now, he was actually going to return empty-handed. One could imagine what would happen if he didn't do anything and went back with his tail between his legs. At that time, not to mention himself, even his father would be implicated. Then, he would become the true sinner of the Yu family. The consequences would be unimaginable and unimaginable. Yu Mian waited for Yang Qindong to leave the pavilion. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly shouted, "Sixth young master, please wait a moment." Stopping in his tracks, Yang Qindong turned around. "What is it? Do you have something to tell me?" "Yes. Yes." This time, Yu Mian lowered his head. Regardless of whether he was willing or not, he had no choice now. "Then speak." Yang Qindong's expression was calm. "Yes, sixth young master. With the continuous development of Crimson City, there are indeed some people who have become restless and dissatisfied. The most representative of them is Yang Taizhu. This is not his real name. It is a name he changed after coming to Crimson City. His father thinks that this name is more resounding and is in line with our original intention of conquering the world with martial arts. And his father is Crimson City's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yang Shan. Since he had already spoken, there was no way out for Yu Mian. Thus, he revealed everything he knew about the situation. Yang Taizhu is a very decisive person. He also has some tricks up his sleeves. Relying on the fact that he is Minister Yang's son, he bullies the good and oppresses the good. Many people who have money and power without any background have been oppressed by him. Not only that, but he also secretly kept the new products produced by the factories in Crimson City, using the excuse that they were not up to standard for his personal use, and then sold them to foreign merchants at a cheaper price. Sixth young master, as you know, the quality of our Red Nest City's goods is excellent, and the variety of them is wonderful. The demand has always exceeded the supply, and as long as these goods are out of the sea, they can be sold for a good price on land. Because of this, the entire Yang family has become rich. Yang Taizhu used most of this money to establish connections. They used this money to bribe and rope in some officials of various levels in Crimson City, causing their network to grow larger and larger. I'm afraid that it won't be long before these people join forces. They will be able to restrict my father's orders. After saying these words, Yu Mian lowered his head. He knew that he had thrown a huge bomb today. Who knew how many people would be punished after this, and how many heads would fall to the ground because of this? Yang Qindong had been listening quietly, and there was no change in his expression. But in fact, his heart was already overflowing with anger. Everything Yang Taizhu had done, in the words of future generations, was smuggling, and this was stealing from him. Then, he used his money to bribe and collude with some officials. It could be imagined that in the long run, once the net was large enough and the energy was strong enough, the first one to be overthrown would be City Lord Yu Qian, who had faithfully carried out his orders. Perhaps it would be his turn next. To think that he was still fighting a bloody battle on the front lines, risking his life in order to seize more territory as quickly as possible, liberate more people, and accumulate more power and influence. But if the rear was unstable, wouldn't everything he was doing now be a wedding dress for others? If that was the case, he would instead become a puppet. Just the thought of it was laughable. Of course, Yang Qindong wouldn't believe Yu Mian's words. Who knew if Yu Mian, who appeared to be honest and considerate, spoke in such a way because he wanted to eliminate his dissidents? Besides, Crimson City was his base camp. There were too many of his trusted aides there. Would those people turn a blind eye to such a thing? With doubts in his heart, Yang Qindong returned to the pavilion and sat down. Tell me, Yang Taizhu is so lawless. Does no one from the Security Bureau care about him? Could it be that the Special Inspector Bureau is useless? And those people from the military, will they turn a blind eye to it? It was precisely because he had left behind these forces and manpower that Yang Qindong was extremely at ease with Crimson City. He didn't believe that some people and some things could be bribed with money. Couldn't they tell that once he was angered, it would be useless no matter how much money they took out? Yu Mian didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked up at Yang Qindong with a troubled expression. Say what you have to say. Don't hesitate. Beta Persei, call Tiger's mane over. Yang Qindong stared intently at Yu Mian's face as he roared outside. Beta Persei left in a hurry, at a loss. Yang Qindong looked at Yu Mian and said, All right, there are no outsiders here now. Tell me everything you know. Even if you say something wrong, I won't blame you. Furthermore, the matter of you saying something wrong won't spread. Now that things had come to this, Yu Mian had no way out. At that moment, he seemed to have made a decision as he said, Yes, sixth young master. This is the situation. This young Taiju is very capable. He first wooed one of Fifth Madam's personal maidservants, Lin Lin, and married her. This way, he would have Fifth Madam's support. Then, he joined forces with the director of Crimson City's Security Bureau, Chen Shuquan. The sixth young master definitely knows this person. This person doesn't speak much, but as his name suggests, he likes power very much. It can be said that he hit it off with Yang Taiju. With the support of the Security Bureau, he naturally gets twice the result with half the effort. As for the Special Inspector Bureau, he definitely won't find trouble with Fifth Madam. My father once doubted it, but soon, Lin Lin personally appeared in the City Lord's office. After that, I heard from my father that Lin Lin said that the entire Crimson City belongs to the Yang family. The Yang family's madam only took some money from her family. Is there a need to inform outsiders and use outsiders to criticize her? There's no need to talk about the military. Now that there's a political department, Lung Song and Commander Gao Xiong are thinking of how to compete with them. How could he possibly intervene in the local affairs? Wouldn't that be handing over his weakness to others? Therefore, they simply turn a blind eye. As for the other officials, they don't dare to interfere. With the idea that mortals suffer when immortals fight, they hide as much as they can. As long as these people don't provoke them, they will also turn a blind eye. Upon hearing Yu Mian's explanation, Yang Qindong widened his eyes. No one dares to interfere. Didn't the Luan family do anything? Luan Xiaoyu is my future sixth madam. Didn't she stand up? It could be heard that although this was a questioning voice, there was a hint of trembling in his voice. It was unknown if it was because of anger or disappointment. Sixth Madam? Ever since you left Crimson City, Sixth Madam led the publicity team to perform for the nearly 5 million Han people. She said that she wanted to change the views and mentality of these people as soon as possible, so she hasn't been in Crimson City. And these things have only happened in the past few months. Sixth Madam doesn't know about it. Yu Mian knew that this was very likely related to a girl's future happiness and the future of a large family. Of course, he had to explain it clearly. Upon hearing this, Yang Qindong's expression looked better, but soon he sneered. The Yang family's money is indeed used by the family. There's no need for outsiders to interfere, but the problem is that she's just a maidservant. What right does she have to represent Fifth Madam? For this matter, did Fifth Madam really show up? Yu Mian thought for a while and shook his head. Probably not. At least, Fifth Madam didn't say anything to my father. Then, this Lin Lin acted on her own accord. But Fifth Madam didn't use people to investigate. She is also responsible. Yang Qindong said. This was equivalent to settling the matter. He really didn't expect that such a thing would happen in Crimson City. If not for the fact that he happened to talk to Yu Mian today and discovered some clues, he was afraid that this matter would only get bigger and bigger, and one day, it would become an unsolvable problem. It seems that some people are used to living a peaceful life. They have forgotten what it's like to lick blood on the blade. If that's the case, then don't blame me for being heartless. After speaking, Yang Qindong raised his hand and slammed down on the stone table in the pavilion. Boom! A thunderous sound suddenly rose. After Yang Qindong's anger soared to the sky and he used his qi, The stone table actually cracked and fell to the ground with a loud bang. Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei, who had just entered the courtyard, saw this scene clearly. Young master. Both of them cried out in surprise and then ran over in big strides. After all, Yang Shandong was still made of flesh and blood. When he slammed down, his hand was bleeding. Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei cried out in pain and shock. They hurriedly shouted outside and arranged for the military doctor to bandage the wound. At the same time, both of them looked at Yu Mian angrily. Don't blame Yu Mian. It has nothing to do with him. Since you're here, listen to what Yu Mian has to say. Tell me your thoughts later. Yang Shandong's voice was very calm. He then waved his hand and went to find the military doctor, including his wound. Yang Shandong didn't doubt Yu Mian's words because some things could be found out after an investigation. If he was lying, then even his father, Yu Qian, couldn't protect him for framing Fifth Madam. After leaving the courtyard and finding the military doctor, Yang Shandong returned to the backyard after bandaging his hand. He saw Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei standing there with flushed faces. Beside them was Yu Mian, who was trembling with fear. He lowered his head and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Chapter 727. Are you trying to scare Yu Mian? Let me tell you, this has nothing to do with him. He is the hero. Needless to say, Yang Shandong knew that the two of them must have gotten angry in front of Yu Mian. Otherwise, they wouldn't be like this. This subordinate doesn't dare. Yu Mian did see Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei getting angry just now. It was as if they wanted to eat someone, which really gave him a fright. All right, Yu Mian, you don't have to be afraid. You have contributed to this matter. How about this? You go take a walk on the streets first and familiarize yourself with the situation in the beginning city. Then, write a city management report for me to read. We'll talk about the construction of the beginning city when the time comes. You can go now. With a smile on his face, Yang Shandong said to Yu Mian with a pleasant expression. Yu Mian naturally nodded and agreed. He excused himself and resigned. After there was no one else around, Yang Shandong's expression turned cold again. Tell me, what do the two of you think? Kill all these sinners. Yes, not only do we have to kill them all, but we also have to hold a public trial to clarify their crimes. We have to let all the officials in the Crimson City know what the consequences of doing wrong are. Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei expressed their opinions one after another. After listening to Yu Mian explain everything from the beginning to the end, they were really angry. They didn't expect that while they were fighting for their lives in front of them, the people behind them would be like this. They even felt that their efforts were not worth it. Yes, some people have to be killed. The public trial also has to be held, but the evidence still has to be found first. Crimson City can't be in chaos because of this. It has to develop normally and healthily. Yang Shandong also said as if he had made a decision. Although Yang Xie was developing rapidly now, in fact, everything was based on Crimson City. For example, the two provinces of Vietnam and Laos, the development of the beginning city, the expansion of the army, and the improvement of combat power all required a lot of money as a foundation. With money, it was naturally easier to do things. Without money, it was not an exaggeration to say that it was difficult to do anything. For the development of Crimson City, Yang Shandong put in a lot of effort. Not only did he share the fruits of his labor, but he also increased the salaries of the officials to ensure that they could work without any worries. But now it seemed the human heart could never be satisfied. He originally thought that everyone would be fine, but since there were still problems, he had no choice but to change his strategy. And this was the result of these people asking for it. It seems that I have to rectify my work style. Check it out and immediately send a message to Yang San. Directly ask him what he does as the chief of security and whether he still wants to work. If he doesn't want to work anymore, arrange for him to go to Crimson City to farm. Don't say that I didn't take care of him. Give him 50 mu of land, which is enough for his family to retire now and in the future. Then send a message to Yang Wu, scold him, and ask him to cooperate with Yang San's next work. Send a message to the First Madam, Ask her to lecture the fifth madam. Tell her that when I'm not around, she has to take care of the maids under her. Send a message to Shunyu. Scold him. As a person in his position, he has to do his job. If he can't do it, then he should just resign. Send a message to Luan Xiaoyu. With her as the leader, let them carry out a rectification operation, including the military. Yang Qindong issued a series of orders. Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei's expressions also became extremely solemn. They knew that this time, the sixth young master was really angry. He was so angry that he wanted to reshuffle the cards in Crimson City. The orders were issued one by one. The two of them were afraid of forgetting something, so they had already taken out a pen and paper and began to write it down. Not long after, the two of them turned around and went straight to the telegraph room. It could be imagined that there would be a lot of work to be done. After arranging everything, Yang Qindong became relaxed. He walked towards the military supplies that were delivered. This time, there were a lot of commercial goods. He wanted to carry out commercial activities in the first city, so he also wanted to build a commercial street here. Reality told him that he couldn't put all his eggs in one basket. He still had to make multiple preparations. It would be best if the city below could be self-sufficient. In this way, even if there was a problem in one of the links, it would not affect the overall situation. In the following time, Yang Qindong found Yumian. The two of them began to walk through the streets and alleys to plan the future construction of the first city. At this time, several fast boats were heading towards Crimson City from the sea. In the cabin, Yang San, who had a fierce face, was among them. Ever since he received the telegram, he rushed to the nearby dock from the Great Ming Dynasty. Along the way, he had a gloomy face. The fast boat that belonged to the Security Bureau had already been arranged. After he boarded the boat, he went straight to Crimson City. The telegram was in Yang San's hands. He had already read it countless times. However, every time he read it, his heart would ache, especially when he saw that he was given 50 mu of land to retire in. He felt a burst of shame. With his indestructible brotherly relationship with Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei, he sent several telegrams back and finally figured out what had happened. He also finally knew why the sixth young master was so angry. Chen Shuquan, you've caused me a lot of trouble. Next, you'll never be able to make a comeback. Sitting in the cabin, Yang San said fiercely in his heart. The work of the Security Bureau had always been very effective. Because of this, he had received countless praises from the sixth young master. After a long time, he was a little numb. He even had the idea that the work of the Security Bureau was very easy to do. No matter who was arranged to take up the post, there shouldn't be any problems. Yang San was careless, or rather, he was blinded by victory. He really didn't think about it. The Security Bureau's achievements today were naturally inseparable from their efforts. However, the more important reason was that Yang Qindong had invested a lot of money in this. The money that the Security Bureau spent in a year alone was more than the annual national taxes of Beiming or Southern Ming. This was still referring to the current situation. The territory wasn't that big, and there weren't many areas that needed to be controlled. As it continued to develop, this money would only be spent more and more. It was precisely with this money as a guarantee that the Security Bureau could get more information and information. It was hateful that Yang Sen hadn't paid attention to this before, so when he used people again, he didn't pay so much attention to the inspection. For example, Chun Shuquan was also one of the old people when the Security Bureau was first established. His actual ability was very ordinary. It was precisely because he had to be taken care of that he was arranged to be a director in Crimson City. After all, the situation there was the best. As long as he didn't take the initiative to look for trouble, not only was the work easy, it was also easy to achieve results. Yes, the results were out now. Even the sixth young master was alarmed, and he was even scolded because of it. Just based on this, he couldn't tolerate it. Yang Sen would definitely not show mercy to this kind of person who spoiled the pot of soup with a piece of rat sh*t. After such a big incident, Yang Sen was almost sent home to be a farmer. If this matter couldn't be resolved, he was afraid that this time, he really wouldn't be able to report back. Has the Security Bureau's operation team set off? Yongsan thought about some of the things that he needed to do when he arrived at Crimson City and thought that he needed reliable people. He looked at Che Chao and asked. Che Chao was a supervisor under the Security Bureau. He was very capable, but because he was still too young and wasn't in the first batch to enter the Security Bureau, he didn't have enough qualifications. Therefore, he had been staying by Yongsan's side to gain experience. This time, he brought Che Chao over to solve Chun Shuchuan's problem better and faster. At the same time, he also wanted to take the opportunity to see if this person had the ability to succeed Yang Shuchuan's position, and if there were any problems with his character. After Chun Shuchuan's incident, Yang San started to pay attention to the character of his subordinates. Reality had already proven that if a person was unreliable, the stronger their ability, the more likely they would become a black sheep. Yang San would definitely not make the same mistake twice. Chief, the operation team has transferred 200 people over. They're all safe and reliable, and they don't have any contact with each other. This time, they were ordered to rush to Crimson City from various places and won't leak any information. It's just that when they enter Crimson City's pier, it might be a little troublesome. The person who spoke was Che Chao. He had delicate features and looked very young. Don't worry, when the time comes, you will stay at the pier and be in charge of receiving them. I will give you my token. Yang Sin said without the slightest emotion in his eyes. This was also the appearance he often maintained in front of his subordinates. Perhaps only in this way, people couldn't see his true thoughts. With Yang San's token, entering the strictly guarded Crimson City's pier would naturally be incomparably smooth. Che Chao quickly agreed and then shut his mouth. Until now, he still didn't know why he suddenly returned to Crimson City. But his intuition told him that there must be some secret mission, because if there was a shortage of manpower, there was a Security Bureau branch in Crimson City, and there were quite a number of people there. However, not informing them seemed to indicate a lot of problems. After Yang San asked these questions, he fell back into a state of meditation. He was already planning his every move after entering Crimson City. This time, he didn't want to rely on others. He wanted to personally investigate Chun Shuchuan's problem. If everything was like what the sixth young master said in the telegram, he would solve it according to the family law and cut off this malignant tumor of the Security Bureau with his own hands. Crimson City. It was still incomparably bustling. Even when the sky was dark, the main streets were already brightly lit. In the Great Ming Dynasty, kerosene lamps were still used, and the palace ministers only used candles. Just this point alone was many times better than before. As the citizens of Crimson City, they were also the first to enjoy the benefits of modern electrical industry. Meanwhile, in a courtyard that was known as the Street of Light, some people were doing shady things. Chapter 728. In a secret room, there were only 2 people sitting inside. There was tea and some snacks on the table. Brother Chun, this time Yumian went over there. Who knows what he might say? I have to say that you're still too careful. If you did as I said, you should just kill him. Wouldn't that solve the problem once and for all? A slender, handsome man with extremely thin lips took the lead to speak up. This person was Yang Taiju. With a father like Yang Shan and a good appearance, he was blessed by the heavens. It could be said that the heavens treated him well. As long as he behaved himself, he was destined to have a good life. Unfortunately, his ambition was too big, so big that it was beyond his ability. It was only a matter of time before he was destroyed. Sitting opposite Yang Taiju was an ordinary-looking man. Even if such a person walked on the street, he wouldn't attract anyone's attention because he looked too ordinary. His height was ordinary, his facial features were ordinary, and there was nothing special about him. Such a person was suitable for an organization like the Security Bureau. No matter what, he didn't stand out. He was Chun Shuquan, the director of the Security Bureau in Crimson City. No, Chun Shuquan spoke. Yu Mian absolutely can't be killed. Not to mention that his father is Yu Qian. If something happens to him, it's impossible that no one will come to investigate. When the higher-ups call for this person, if we do this, Wouldn't that be exposing ourselves? Yang Taiju also knew that killing Yu Mian at this time was a little too far-fetched, but for some reason, he had a faint worry in his heart. Ordinary people didn't dare to casually talk about him, but this person had a father who was more powerful than him. Once he saw that person, he really couldn't predict what he would say. "Sai, it's too late to say anything now. I hope we'll be honest and not talk nonsense." Although Yang Taiju was saying words of comfort, his face was still nervous. Chun Shuchuan's ordinary face chuckled and said, "Brother Yang, you don't have to be too worried. Yu Mian isn't that stupid. Saying anything about us won't do him any good. Besides, he has no evidence of our crimes in his hands. Besides, although he has gone to the north, it is still unknown whether he will be able to see that person or whether he will have the opportunity to meet him alone. Even if he dares to say anything, our security bureau will be the first to receive the news. At least until now, I haven't received any orders. You don't have to worry." "Yes, with Brother Chin here, I am naturally not worried." Yang Taiju chuckled. Then, as if he had thought of something, he asked, "By the way, Brother Chun, do you think the Security Bureau will secretly arrange for other people to come to Crimson City?" "I don't think so," Chen Shuquan said confidently. "The director has a good relationship with me. He won't suspect me easily. If he really has any thoughts, he should ask me first. Even if he sends someone to investigate, he should inform me. Even if you don't inform me, my men are watching the docks day and night. It will be as difficult as ascending to the heavens for anyone who wants to get to the docks without being noticed." Chen Shuquan was indeed very confident. He was equally confident in his relationship with Yang San. Logically speaking, he was right. If it was just an ordinary person who complained, Yang San would really inform him beforehand. After all, suspecting a subordinate for no reason would only make the other brothers bitterly disappointed. But he forgot one thing. It depended on who was the one who complained. What if it was Yang Qindong who gave the order? Then it wouldn't be a complaint, but 100% execution of the order. If Yang Qindong gave the order, Yang Sin would definitely attract great attention. Not only that, but he would also have to do a good job. Even if there was no problem, he must provide evidence. Under such circumstances, how could Yang San inform Chen Shuquan about it? At this moment, it could only be said that Chen Shuquan was too confident, so confident that he was a little arrogant. It was a pity that no matter if it was Chen Shuquan or Yang Taiju, they didn't think too much about it. They only thought that even though Yang Qindong was formidable to the extent of having an incomparable status in the entire Yang faction, in all of Crimson City, a person was a person, he wasn't a god. How could he possibly care about everything? Furthermore, they didn't do anything to betray Yang Xie. They were just using their power and status to earn more money. Was there anything wrong with that? Which dynasty, which family didn't use this opportunity to develop? What they did wasn't a big deal, so it wouldn't attract Yang Qindong's attention. Yu Mian's matter seemed to have come to an end here. Following that, the two of them talked about the Luan family. The Luan family was a special existence in the entire Crimson City. The Yang family only had a total of 4 people, but these 4 people all held high positions and held different positions and influence in different industries. Especially their daughter, Wan Xiaoyu. When she reached the age, she would become the 6th madam. How could such a family not be illustrious? In Crimson City, anyone with ambition would have the idea of getting close to the other party. Because once they obtained the friendship of the other party, no matter what they did in the future, it would be twice the result with half the effort. Yang Taiju had been thinking about this recently. Considering the current situation of the Luan family, he was powerless against Luan Qi and Luan Qi's mother, Zhou Hua. These two had power and status, and were busy with work every day. Outsiders simply didn't have the time to come into contact with them. As for his daughter, Wan Xiaoyu, her identity meant that no one would dare to have any ideas about her. Even Yang Taiju couldn't, and even his father, Yang Shan, didn't dare to touch her. After thinking about it, there was only one Luan Shaoqin. This person was placed in an important position and had already become the governor of Lao province at a young age. His future was limitless. Most importantly, he had a fatal flaw, and that was that he was young, and he still didn't have a wife. Although Wan Xiaochun had already married 2 concubines in order to appease the hearts of the nobles in Lao Lao, and also in order to give birth to the Luan family, he didn't have a wife. In the eyes of others, that was the high and mighty position, and only then was he recognized by the outside world as a member of the Luan family. Currently, Yang Taizhu and Chen Shuquan were discussing the matter of finding a wife for Luan Xiaoyu. They had already thought about it. As long as this wife was one of their own, then if anything critical happened in the future, this person would play an absolutely crucial role. This was equivalent to not only establishing a relationship with the 5th madam, but also joining forces with the 6th madam's family. At that time, as long as the 2 pillow winds blew and the one above loosened her mouth, even if there was a huge matter, it could be suppressed. We have to hurry up with the matter of finding someone. He's not young anymore, and finding a wife is only a matter of time. If it wasn't for that statement that the wife of a high-ranking official must be a Han, I'm afraid that there would already be arrangements and we wouldn't have a chance. Yang Taizhu thought about this matter and reminded Che Chao, who was sitting opposite him. Brother Yang, don't worry. I have already arranged for the security bureau to search the city. It's just that your requirements are a bit too high. You need to be young and beautiful, and you also need to have a clean background. The most important thing is that you listen to us. This kind of search is somewhat contradictory, so it dragged on for a few days. While Che Chao was complaining, Yang Tieju's eyes were already wide open. The person must be beautiful, otherwise Luan Xiaochun might not be able to take a fancy to her. Her background must also be clean. Do you think that when the Luan family is looking for a wife, they won't let people investigate? As for listening to us, this is even more important. We won't be kind enough to make a wedding dress for others. The person we find must be helpful to us. Yang Taizhu didn't relent, and Chen Shuquan could only sigh and nod. Okay, I'll continue to arrange for people to search. By the way, the latest batch of goods should be out of the cabin. When will you give me a definite letter? I'll start to arrange it. Well, it'll be soon. It'll be in 3 days at the new dock. I've already arranged everything that needs to be arranged. When the time comes, all you need to do is to send people from the security bureau to temporarily seal off the dock for 4 hours. Then, everything will be ready. Chen Shuquan nodded when he heard this. That's easy. It's not the first time we've done such a thing. Ha ha. The two looked at each other at this moment and smiled. The so-called status and power were all transient. Only the gold and silver in their hands were real. As long as they had money, where couldn't they be happy and carefree? The two were still secretly plotting here, and from time to time, their laughter could be heard, which was a kind of imagination for the future. But what they didn't know was that while they were talking, the director of the security bureau, Yang San, had already arrived at the new dock on a fast boat without anyone noticing. He was stopped by the security bureau of the Crimson City, who were guarding here day and night. After Yang San led Che Chao and dozens of people off the fast boat, he took out the pass issued by the security bureau, and Lung Feng, who was guarding the dock, allowed them to pass according to the regulations. But soon, secret agents of the security bureau surrounded them. Wait, you said that you have a pass from the security bureau, but why haven't we heard about this? Take it out and let us have a look. 4 men dressed like commoners walked over. Then they looked at Yang San's group of dozens of people with arrogant looks on their faces. Who do you think you are? Che Chao stepped forward. For a small fry like this, there was no need for the director to come out personally. The people of the security bureau were used to doing whatever they wanted. Suddenly, they saw someone who was more arrogant than them. The 4 of them looked at each other, then laughed. Yo, I didn't know that you're so brave. Do you know who we are? Let me tell you. Have you heard of the security bureau? You actually want to enter the city under our banner. Then you have to go through us first. Chapter 729. The leader had a smug look on his face. In fact, he was also one of Director Yang Shuchuan's most valued subordinates, Dong Hui. Usually, he was in charge of the entry and exit of the docks. When he said this, he intentionally glanced at Lung Feng, who was on duty. He was basically telling Che Chao and the others that if they didn't want to be captured by Lung Feng, they had to be more obedient. Usually, he would scare others, but this time, he was intimidated by Dong Hui's words. Che Chao smiled, but didn't reply. He only turned his head to look at Director Yang San, obviously asking for instructions. Don't make a big deal out of it. Take them down first. Yang San's position meant that he was incomparably decisive when it came to doing things. He really wasn't in the mood to explain anything to a few small fries. As soon as Yang San spoke, the people around him immediately moved. They moved like lightning and restrained 3 of them. Only Dong Hui's skills were not bad. He actually dodged them. After jumping 3 meters away, he suddenly shouted at Lung Feng, who was on duty, "Come quickly, there's a spy here." As soon as he shouted, the Lung Feng over there moved. As elites, they had long been paying attention to what was happening here. The appearance of Yang San's group was already very eye-catching. It was difficult for dozens of men not to attract attention wherever they went. However, they had the Security Bureau's credentials. They belonged to 2 different departments, so they had no choice but to let them go. When they saw Dong Hui, who was also from the Security Bureau, stop them, they thought that it was indeed an internal matter of the Security Bureau, so they didn't care. However, Dong Hui's sudden shout made them feel that something was wrong, so they swarmed over. The entire squad of Lung Feng only had a few seconds to pull out their guns, then surrounded Yang San and the others. "Put your hands on your heads and squat down. Tell us your true identities, or we'll shoot." The black muzzles were fixed on Yang San and the others. Che Chao first stood in front of Yang San, using his body as a human shield, then said, "We're all on the same side. Don't misunderstand." "Who's on the same side as you? You keep saying that you're from the Security Bureau, but why didn't we receive any orders? You want to play the role of a spy from the Security Bureau? Your performance is still lacking." Dong Hui jumped out, accusing Che Chao and the others of having a problem with their identities. Che Chao's identity was known to many of the Lung Feng patrolling the area, who often appeared at the docks. Now that he said this, of course, everyone believed him and not Yang San and the others. Che Chao's group, Dong Hui's accusation, everyone had their own opinions. If this continued, the situation would only get worse. Seeing that the situation was about to get out of control, Yang San finally stood up and said, "All of you, shut up." As Yang San spoke, he took out an officer's certificate and handed it to a Class 1 sergeant, Lung Feng. "This is my certificate. It's enough to prove my identity. If you still don't believe me, send someone to the palace with this and find Yang Wu. He will verify everything." Lung of Lung Feng's Lung, the Lung's SSS. Seeing that it was a green military ID, squad leader Lung Feng took it without any hesitation. He opened it and saw the words, "Yang San, Director of the Security Bureau, Senior Colonel," written on it. The rank of colonel was also the highest in the mercenary army at that time. Other than Yang Chendong, the 1st Division Commander of the Army, Lung Song, and the 1st Division Commander of the Navy, Gao Xiong, were only at the same rank. However, a senior colonel had appeared in front of him. Lung Feng's expression changed as he looked at Yang San. Speaking of which, if Yang San's military certificate showed that he was a major or even a lieutenant colonel, it wouldn't have aroused Lung Feng's suspicions. However, the senior colonel was too eye-catching. It gave people a surreal feeling. If that's the case, I'll need to send someone to the palace with this document. I hope you can understand. Class Monitor Lung Feng didn't dare to make a decision at the moment, so he decided to do as the other party said. After all, he knew Yang Wu. Yang Wu would come to the docks to check on things when he had nothing to do. "Sure, but I have a request. No one here is allowed to leave. Also, what happened here must not be spread out before Yang Wu arrives." Yang Sen nodded. He could understand the other party's actions. They were also doing things according to the rules, but he wouldn't allow others to ruin his big plan. All right, Class Monitor Lung Feng was also very straightforward. After making a promise to Yang San, he sent the vice squad leader out and told him to ride a bicycle to the palace to see Yang Wu Yi. Lung Feng didn't speak to him. Instead, after looking at the document, his attitude changed greatly. In Dong Hui's eyes, All of this gave him a bad feeling. The other party claimed to be from the Security Bureau, but he had never seen them before. Moreover, judging from Lung Feng's attitude towards them, they seemed to be of a very high rank. Could it be that the other party was his superior? When he thought about how the Security Bureau mostly communicated through a single line, such a possibility existed, his expression became somewhat ugly. The mission that Director Chun Shuquan had given him was to watch here and not allow strangers to come ashore. If there were any, he had to report it. For the sake of his duty, he prepared to leave quietly. But just as he took a step forward, Yang San's voice rang out. You are very smart and know how to see the situation. It's just that you followed the wrong person. If you can turn over a new leaf, you could be considered a promising talent. He didn't think that his actions would be seen by others. At this moment, Dong Hui knew that he couldn't leave, so he could only turn his head and chuckle. Then, he stood there and waited. He was following orders, and what he did was in accordance with the rules. There was really no need to be afraid of others. Both parties waited here. In less than an hour, the sound of bicycle bells rang out in the distance. Following that, Yang Wu led a group of Lung Feng and appeared here. Even though it was night and the lights at the pier weren't very bright, Yang San still recognized at a glance that this time, it wasn't only Yang Wu who came. The division commander of the Army's 1st Division, Lung Song, also appeared with him. Yang Wu was naturally dressed casually, while Lung Song was indeed wearing a senior colonel's military uniform. The 2 bars and 4 fours were extremely dazzling under the light. Seeing that the division commander had arrived, the platoon commander at the pier immediately stood at attention and saluted. Lung Song stopped the bicycle and casually bowed to the soldiers of the Lung Feng. He strode over to Yang San with a smile on his face and said, Chief Yang, why didn't you say anything before coming? This is a surprise attack, isn't it? Seeing that not only did the division commander know Yang San, but his attitude was also so warm, the platoon commander at the side naturally retreated to the side. At this moment, Dong Hui's expression also turned ugly. It was obvious that he had made a mistake this time. It seemed that not only was the other party one of his men, but his position was also quite high. Yang San returned the military salute to Lung Song, but there was no smile on his face. After the salute, he said to Che Chao, Restrain these 4 people. I want to interrogate them later. After making some simple arrangements, Yang San looked at Lung Song and glanced at Yang Wu. He only said one sentence. Young Master is very angry this time. With just one sentence, Yang Wu, who was incomparably famous in Crimson Nest City, who was called Yang Wu Yi, immediately lowered his head. Just one sentence was enough to show that the young master was dissatisfied with him. As one of the first 5 servants of the Yang family, they were different from the others. Others might have to rely on military merits to be promoted, but their status rose along with Yang Xie's continuous growth. If one had to describe it, they were the same as the eunuchs by the emperor's side. They only needed to serve Yang Qindong well. It could be said that a single sentence determined their future in life. Now that the master was angry, it meant that Yang Wu didn't do his job well. Yang Wu felt very ashamed. Seeing Yang Wu lower his head, Yang San didn't say anything else. Instead, he looked at Lung Song and said, Young master is also very dissatisfied with your work. Crimson City is Yang Xie's foundation, yet such a big thing happened. You didn't notice it, didn't report it, and didn't solve it. This time you lost points. Yes, I will reflect. Lung Song also lowered his head, looking like he had done something wrong and was very regretful. Logically speaking, with his position in the military, Lung Song was the 1st Regiment commander of the Army, the 1st Division commander of the Army. Other than Yang Qindong, very few people could suppress him, not even Yang San. However, the problem was that Yang San came as an imperial envoy to solve the problem. His position was completely different. He came as a representative of the 6th Young Master. What he said was also instructed by the 6th Young Master. Other than admitting his mistake, he could only cooperate. There is no use in reflecting. The Young Master wants to see results. I hope that you can redeem yourselves and cooperate with my work. If you can't even do this well, I can only report the truth to the Young Master. When the time comes, if your positions change, don't blame me. Yang Sen didn't want to have any deep contact with Lung Song. Although the other party was also in a high position, he was very clear about his own identity. He was a servant of the Yang family, one of the young master's people. He only served the young master and didn't need to care about other people's feelings. Moreover, as the head of the security bureau, if he had too much contact with important members of the military, in the eyes of others, it was inevitable that they would have other thoughts. If that was the case, he couldn't imagine what the result would be. Yang San's official words fell into Lung Song's ears. He didn't even dare to have any thoughts of objecting. Yes, Lung Feng of the army will definitely cooperate. We will definitely cooperate. Very good. That was to lock up Lung Feng in this class first. It's not that they did anything wrong, but this is an important matter. We can't be careless in the slightest. My arrival is still a secret and definitely can't be spread. Understand? Yang Sen was satisfied with Lung Song's attitude. He took this opportunity to give his first order after coming ashore. Chapter 730. Understood. Lung Song nodded, then called over an adjutant beside him. He whispered a few words, and someone immediately went to implement this matter. Just as Lung Song finished making the arrangements, Yang Sen spoke again. From today onwards, the dock will look the same as usual on the surface, but in fact, any personnel and goods entering or leaving the dock will need my permission to go out to sea. In order not to alert the enemy, you can make a move at sea. In short, the dock must be safe and sound. This matter will require Division Commander Lung's attention. As for the matters at sea, I will visit Division Commander Gao Xiong and explain it to him. Good. There are no problems on my side. I will personally arrange for people to guard here. Absolutely nothing will happen. Lung Song patted his chest and promised. Thank you for your hard work. Everyone, do what you're supposed to do. Later, write down everything you know about Yang Taizhu and Chen Shuquan on a piece of paper and have someone send it to me. I want to know more about them. Yang San's businesslike face gave off a huge psychological pressure. After saying this, Yang San turned and walked over to Dong Hui and the other three. After arranging the external affairs, it was time to deal with the internal affairs of the Security Bureau. At this time, Dong Hui was no longer as lively as before. Instead, he had a face full of respect and worship. From Che Chao's mouth, he finally knew who he was facing just now. It was actually the boss of the Security Bureau. This made him excited, but also a little afraid. He was excited because he had worshipped the bureau chief for a long time. Now that he could finally see his idol at such a close distance, his heartbeat had already sped up countless times. He was afraid because he had stopped the other party and even almost made a move on him. He didn't know what kind of punishment he would receive for doing something wrong. With these feelings of apprehension, Dong Hui knelt on the ground with a plop the moment Yang San strode into the duty room at the side of the dock. At this moment, he only had one thought, and that was to do his best to make up for what he had done wrong. Yang San boldly sat down on a chair in the duty room. He looked at Dong Hui, who was kneeling on the floor and didn't even dare to raise his head, and said, I heard that you are Chen Shuqiuan's trusted aide. Have you ever participated in his matters? He thought that the director would reprimand him for his actions just now, but he didn't expect that the director was talking about something else. After a moment of hesitation, Dong Hui immediately shook his head and said, I'm from the Security Bureau. Usually, I only come into contact with Director Chan for work matters, such as guarding the docks and keeping an eye on all suspicious people. As for Director Chen's private affairs, I have no right to participate, nor will I participate. With just a few words, Dong Hui had already made his position clear. That was, he was only Chen Shuqiuan's subordinate. The reason why he was chosen as Chen Shuqiuan's confidant was because of his ability. As for personal friendship, there was really nothing to it. This was also one of the rules of the Security Bureau. There was only work between superiors and subordinates, and there was no personal relationship between them. This way, it was possible to avoid any feelings between the two parties and make them emotional during work. When Yang San heard Dong Hui's words, he nodded in satisfaction. He was not worried that this person would dare to lie to him. The internal rules of the Security Bureau were very strict. If he deceived his superior, it would be difficult for him to die, even if he wanted to. Moreover, there were some things that he only needed to send someone to investigate, and he could come to a conclusion. Dong Hui should know this. In this way, Dong Hui should not be involved in Chen Shuchuan's affairs much. From his point of view, this person could still be used. If he performed well, it was not impossible to put him in an important position in the future. He thought that Che Chao was going to replace Chen Shuchuan's position, but he was a newcomer and couldn't sort out many relationships for a while. If he had the help of a local snake like Dong Hui, then the progress of the work would definitely speed up. Yang Sen had an idea in his mind. When he looked at Dong Hui, who was kneeling on the ground, he was no longer as cold and ruthless as before when he spoke. Dong Hui, I believe what you just said for the time being, but you should also know that if you lie to me, what will the consequences be? Yes, your subordinate knows, so your subordinate will never dare to lie to the director. Dong Hui hurriedly kowtowed to the ground. At this moment, he just wanted to dig out his heart to show the director that he really didn't participate in some of Chen Shuchuan's specific affairs. In fact, it was not that Dong Hui didn't want to, but that Chen Shuquan was being careful. Since it was a secret, of course, the fewer people who knew, the better. Besides, once the matter was known by his subordinates, if one of them contacted the headquarters and reported the matter to the director, wouldn't he be shooting himself in the foot? Yang Sen also thought about this problem, so he initially ruled out the possibility that Dong Hui was involved in the smuggling incident. Even if the other party didn't have this motive and condition, Yang Sen could say something openly. Very well, I hope you haven't participated. If so, your opportunity to make a contribution will come. To tell you the truth, this time, the director came in person to solve some of Chen Shuchuan's personal problems. If there is no accident, he can no longer be competent for the position of the director of the Crimson City Security Bureau. There's still a lot of things to do next, and even the entire Crimson City Security Bureau will undergo a big reshuffle. If you perform well, you can still stay and be entrusted with important tasks. As for where to go, you can make your own choice. What choice was there? One was heaven, the other was hell. Dong Hui didn't even want to think about it more. He immediately said, "Director, please rest assured, I will perform well and actively cooperate. Raise your head." Since he was going to continue to use Dong Hui, and in order not to alert the enemy and arouse Chen Shuchuan's suspicion, Yang Sen decided to add more weight to Dong Hui and give him a good reminder. Hearing this, Dong Hui raised his head and saw Yang Sen glaring at him. Remember, if you dare to have any selfish motives or ruin things, I promise you that you will suffer a fate worse than death. Your family and relatives will suffer the same fate. Understand? Understood, understood. Dong Hui was really frightened by this gaze, but after raising his head, he immediately lowered it again, trembling all over. After convincing Dong Hui, or putting enough pressure on him, Yang San walked out of the dock's duty room. He looked at Che Chao, who was guarding the door, and said, "There shouldn't be any problems with this person, but you still need to send someone to check on him. If you're sure there's no problem, use him well. He should be one of your capable assistants in the future." "Yes, director, subordinate understands." Che Chao's expression didn't change, and then began to call people to investigate Dong Hui's situation. At the same time, he also wanted to interrogate the other 3 Security Bureau agents to get first-hand information. Yang San came to Crimson City. Although he was still discovered, he managed to salvage the situation in time. Furthermore, when he found Yang Wu, Lung Song happened to be there as well. With the help of the number 1 person in the army, the matter of him arriving at the dock was suppressed. No one reported, and even the people guarding the dock were pressured by Yang San's power and chose to follow. As the director of Crimson City's Security Bureau, Chen Shuquan didn't know anything. He still did what he was supposed to do, preparing for another smuggling operation in 3 days. Yang Taizhu went to the palace more frequently these 2 days. Of course, with his status, he could not enter the inner palace. He could only meet his wife, Lin Lin, who he spent a lot of effort to catch up with, in the outer palace. He took the opportunity to get information from her, wanting to see if the palace was any different than usual. Since it was Yang Chendong's personal order, all the actions were naturally concealed. Not to mention that Lin Lin was only a servant girl that the fifth madam fancied. Even the fifth madam herself didn't know that Yang San came to Crimson City to investigate. After hugging Lin Lin tenderly for a while, Yang Taiju left the palace with a satisfied face. He didn't find anything wrong, so he decided to do everything according to plan. He thought that after this matter was done, he would have a large sum of money. In the long run, his Yang family would be rich enough to rival a country. At that time, even if there was a possibility of the matter being exposed, he would just leave Crimson City. After he had enough money, even if he formed a team, building a country wouldn't be a problem. Yang Taiju was sometimes a little arrogant. Since Yang Chendong could do it from scratch, why couldn't he do it with so much money? Nobles, generals, and ministers, it was better to have guts. Doing too much injustice leads to one's own destruction. This sentence was said by the ancients, and the truth also proved the authenticity and reliability of this sentence. 3 days later, when the time came to 9:30 p.m., when the docks began to return to silence, Director Chen Shuquan appeared on time. Just like the previous times when he smuggled goods, he still used the name of the Security Bureau, saying that he wanted to secretly transport a batch of goods out to sea. With this name, when he brought 60 to 70 carriages of goods all the way to the new docks, no one dared to check. The green light all the way let the goods be sent to the long-prepared cargo ship. While the goods were being loaded, Director Chen Shuquan took out a box of Aries brand cigarettes from his pocket. He took out a stick and put it in his mouth, then took out another stick and handed it to the head of the Security Bureau, Dong Hui. It had to be said that cigarettes could not only reduce stress and loneliness, but also play a strong role in communication. The cigarette was lit, and the relationship between Chen Shuquan and Dong Hui seemed to be a lot closer at this moment. Dong Hui, did anything happen at the docks during this time? When he said this, Chen Shuchuan's eyes narrowed slightly, as if he could see through Dong Hui's heart. Chapter 731. Nothing happened. Everything is normal, Yi Zichen said. Dong Hui said with a smile, but his heart was beating like a drum. After all, Chen Shuquan was his superior, and he really had no confidence in lying in front of his superior. Fortunately, he was very smart and did not dwell on this matter. Instead, he took the initiative to change the topic and asked, "Director, are these things to be given to the Security Bureau personnel outside the island? There are a lot of these things." And Chen Shuquan, who was still smiling, immediately changed his expression and said seriously, "Have you forgotten the confidentiality rules? Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. Don't say what you shouldn't say. How can you know these things with your status? All right, you must be tired these days. Go home and have a good rest. There's no need for you here." The sudden coldness caused Dong Hui to pretend to be scared. He nodded his head repeatedly and then left. Looking at his back, Chen Shuchuan's heart was already filled with killing intent. His subordinate was curious about this batch of goods. This was not a good sign, and it was best to kill the other party once and for all. Dong Hui did not know that Chen Shuquan had the intention to kill him. In fact, even if he knew, he would not be afraid. Right now, his backer was the bureau chief. As for now, since he was kicked out, of course, he had to inform the higher-ups of the news as soon as possible. This was a good opportunity to perform meritorious deeds. In order not to attract Chen Shuchuan's attention, Che Chao did not place one of his own people at the dock. He only did 2 things. The first was to control the sea area outside the new dock in Crimson City, and the second was to wait for Dong Hui's news. One in and one out, both points are controlled. Che Chao firmly believed that unless Yang Taiju and Chen Shuquan did not do anything, they would not be able to escape the big net he set up. But what he did not expect was that the other party would take the bait so quickly. When Dong Hui found Che Chao with sweat all over his forehead and said that their director, Chen Shuquan, sent dozens of carts of goods to the dock in the name of the Security Bureau, Che Chao also stood up from his chair excitedly. He often followed Bureau Chief Yang San, so he naturally knew that the Security Bureau did not inform him about the goods. In other words, tonight's action was completely decided by Chun Shuquan. Since that was the case, there was no doubt that the goods were smuggled. Very good, Dong Hui. You made a great contribution this time. How about this? I'll give you 50 elite brothers. You take them to capture the backbone of the city's security bureau. As long as they don't resist, don't kill them. If they resist, you can be heavy-handed. In short, do not allow any important personnel to escape or leave our sight. Do you understand? Dong Hui had already used his actions to prove his position. At this moment, Che Chao could be considered to have completely trusted him. Yes, please rest assured, Director Che. I'll get it done right away. Dong Hui was also a little excited. This was a heavy responsibility. From this moment on, not only would he be pulled out of the Chun Shuquan case, but he would also enter the list of meritorious people. It could be imagined that his future would be limitless. Che Chao quickly left with the 50 elites of the Security Bureau. Che Chao immediately got up and rushed to the place where Director Yang was resting. Not long after, a large net was spread out, and a series of plans on paper became the final practical action. Yang residence. Ever since Yang Shan was tricked by Yang Chendong, he was sent to Beiming from Nanming. After he was sent to Chiqian City, he was given a large residence. He was appointed as the Minister of Foreign Affairs to formulate foreign policies. Yang Shan had contributed greatly to the peaceful liberation of the First Shang dynasty. As a result, his words carried weight in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It was said that a weak country had no diplomacy. Although Chiqian City didn't establish a country, it was better than one. Powerful military and economic capabilities made it easy for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to work with foreign countries. After establishing the two provinces of Vietnam and Laos, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs set up branches there respectively, and its status became even more extraordinary. In addition, Yang Shan and Chiqian City's mayor, Yu Qian, and the Special Inspector Bureau's director, Shun Yu, used to be officials in the same court. All of these made Yang Shan's position unshakable. As a result, the Yang family could be arrogant when they were outside, as though they were superior to others. As the saying goes, a man whose heart is not content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Yang Shan, who was originally the left assistant minister of the Ministry of Rights in Nanming, was no longer the same as before. He should be reminiscing about the past. However, there are people who wouldn't forget their past hardships after gaining power. Instead, they believed that everything they had now was because of the hardships and tiredness they had suffered. This was the reward they deserved after putting in so much effort. When a person thought that everything he had was reasonable and deserved, his mentality would naturally change as a result. Yang Shan was the most typical example. With this kind of inflated mentality, the actions of his son, Yang Taizhu, seemed to be a matter of course. The Yang residence was brightly lit. Although it was already past 10 at night, most of the commoners were already asleep. However, it was still as bright as day in the Yang residence. All of this was because another batch of goods had left today. It wouldn't be long before countless taels of silver would be sent to them. With money and power, people would become inflated. Yang Taizhu was the most typical example. At this moment, he wasn't sleeping. Instead, he was very energetic and was playing a game of hide-and-seek with 4 young women. It was different from other people playing this game. If any of the 4 women were caught by Yang Taizhu, they would have to strip naked. This was what rich people did. What they did was to have fun. The 4 women were commoners who had spent money to trade with Nanming. They were originally good-looking, but because their living conditions weren't good, they became sallow and emaciated over time. However, the moment they were chosen by Yang Taizhu in the refugee camp, their lives had already changed. They ate well and wore warm clothes every day. All they needed to do was to become this man's plaything. When a poor person had problems, even eating their fill, there was no need to talk about ideals and dignity. For a mouthful of food, the 4 women could only comply and allow Yang Taizhu to humiliate them. They were angry, but they didn't dare to say anything. Even though Yang Qindong had already stipulated that true Han people weren't allowed to buy and sell privately, and they weren't allowed to be forced or restricted. However, when they fell into Yang Tieju's hands, how could they have the chance to redress their grievances? Not to mention, even if they wanted to sue, where would they find the right way to do so? In the face of the powerful Yang residents, an existence that could cover the sky with one hand, anyone could only accept their fate. Yang Taiju was in a good mood. He was in the mood to play tonight. He was prepared to capture all 4 women and sleep with them. Thus, even though it was already late at night, he still didn't have the intention to rest. From time to time, the women's screams and Yang Tieju's satisfied laughter could be heard in the residence. This wasn't the first time such a scene had appeared. The servants in the residence were almost used to it. In any case, as long as the young master was happy, he could do whatever he wanted as the master. How could they dare to interfere? Who could interfere? Dong, 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 dong. Suddenly, a loud knocking sound broke this laughter. In the middle of the night in the Yang manor, it was very sudden and unexpected. Who is it? It's already the middle of the night. Why are you knocking on the door? The gatekeeper sleepily got up and walked to the main entrance. He opened a small door, wanting to see who was so blind to disturb the Yang residents in the middle of the night. The moment the small door was opened, countless tall figures suddenly appeared in front of him. Then, without waiting for the gatekeeper to do anything or even open his mouth to cry out in alarm, those tall figures rushed in through the small door like fish in the sea. There was also a tall figure who immediately reached out and covered the door's mouth, blocking it completely, making it unable to make any sound. Ugh! The gatekeeper still wanted to struggle, but a clear voice rang in his ears. We are the Cold Vanguard Warriors. We're going to search the Yang residence. This place is going to be over soon. You better cooperate. If you still dare to scream, even if we kill you in the next moment, it will be in vain. The people who came were indeed the Cold Vanguard Warriors. Their mission was to surround the Yang residence and eliminate all security threats. The order even stated that if anyone resisted, they could use ruthless means to subdue them or even kill them. However, he was just a gatekeeper. They were all here to earn a living. The Cold Vanguard Warriors did not really want to kill him. The gatekeeper finally became obedient. After all, when faced with a life-threatening situation, the so-called 1 month's salary was nothing. The Cold Blade Warriors walked past them and charged towards various parts of the Yang estate. Long before they came, they had already obtained the blueprint of a Yang mansion. After clearly understanding the situation inside, they could ensure that they could control all the vital points in the shortest amount of time, minimizing the possible resistance and threats that might exist in the Yang mansion to the greatest extent. As more and more Cold Vanguard Warriors rushed into the Yang residence, the servants in the residence finally noticed them. Then, there was a series of shouts and screams, causing the entire residence to become chaotic. It also startled Yang Taiju, who was still playing his game. Young master, this is bad. A lot of Cold Vanguard Warriors suddenly appeared in the residence and surrounded us. Our armory has also been sealed by them. What should we do? A burly man who looked like a servant rushed into Yang Tieju's courtyard and saw that there were already 2 young ladies dressed in pure white clothes. However, he acted as if he did not see them and spoke with a panicked expression. Chapter 732. Yang Taiju, whose eyes were still covered by a black cloth, instinctively wanted to fly into a rage when he heard that someone had broken into his backyard. This was his private property, and usually, no one was allowed to enter without orders. Otherwise, there would only be one result: death. Just as he was about to flare up, he suddenly froze when he heard that Lung Feng had barged into his residence. Then, with a wave of his right hand, he tore off the black cloth that was covering his eyes and asked with a ferocious look on his face, "What happened?" Before the servant could answer, more footsteps came from outside the door. Then, a cold front officer wearing a military uniform with the insignia of a colonel on his shoulder appeared in the backyard. Behind him was a dense group of cold front soldiers with calm expressions and sharp eyes. Yang Taizhu, who was about to angrily scold the intruder for intruding into his private residence, saw the intruder's face clearly. His original anger instantly disappeared and was replaced by a smile. Haha, so it's Regiment Commander Tung. Please forgive me for not welcoming you when you've come to visit. The intruder was Tung Shan, the first regiment commander of the Cold Front Army. Due to his seniority and fearlessness in battle, he was deeply trusted by Yang Qindong. Even in the entire Qiqian city, there were not many people who could make him lower his head. Normally, even his father, Yang Shan, who was the Minister of Foreign Affairs at the time, would show him some respect, seeing that it was this person who appeared in his residence. Although Yang Taizhu was furious, he still didn't lose his temper. Tung Shan didn't immediately answer Yang Tiezhu's question. He only glanced behind Yang Taizhu. When he saw that two of the four women were only wearing a thin layer of green gauze while the other two were already clean, he frowned slightly. The four of you should immediately find clothes and put them on. It's really immoral to be like this. The four ladies were already frightened by the cold blade warriors who rushed in. When they heard Tung Shan's words, it was as if they had heard the sound of nature. They hurriedly retreated to look for clothes, but before that, they still looked at Yang Taizhu with pleading eyes. This person was their master. If he didn't say anything, they wouldn't dare to act rashly. Even though their current clothes were very embarrassing and they had already abandoned their dignity, they still stood there foolishly after a long time of getting used to it. All right, go, and put on your clothes. Yang Taizhu forced a smile and said to the four women. Only then did the four beautiful figures quickly disappear. When Yang Taizhu was left standing there alone, he said to Tung Shan in a fawning tone, "Regiment Commander Tung, I don't know what made you so angry. If there's anything I can do for you, I will definitely do my best." How about this? It's really tiring for the brothers to carry out a mission so late at night. Why don't you all receive 10 silvers as compensation? Yang Taizhu said as he observed the changes in Tung Shan. He was not too flustered in his heart. Firstly, his background was deep enough. His father was in the residence, and he was the Minister of Foreign Affairs. His wife, Lin Lin, was also in the palace serving the fifth madam. She was his biggest trump card. If something happened to him, she would definitely not sit back and do nothing. Secondly, he was confident that no one could blackmail him. This was also why he was very confident in Chen Shuquan, the director of the Security Bureau. All along, the Security Bureau had been a unified system. Even the military had no right to question or investigate what they did in Crimson City. Of course, it was not that he did not think that something might have happened to Chen Shuquan, but he quickly denied it in his heart. Chen Shuquan was the director of the Security Bureau in Crimson City. He was the number one existence. Who could investigate him? Who had the authority to investigate him? No matter what, even if something really happened to Chen Shuquan and he was investigated, what did that have to do with him? He was a good citizen. Although he had been working with Chen Shuquan, he did not leave any evidence. Even if something happened to the other party, there was no evidence to blame him. Not to mention, as long as something didn't happen immediately with his father and Madam's relationship, after some interaction, he would definitely be able to turn big things into small ones. Yang Taizhu was very confident. When he looked at Tung Shan, he was no longer as afraid as before. He even openly mentioned the matter of bribery. From this, it could be seen how bold he was. Hearing that Yang Taizhu wanted to give the Lung Feng soldiers money for their hard work, Tung Shan chuckled. 10 silvers for a soldier. Young Master Yang is really generous. These words were said with a smile, so Yang Taizhu was unable to see the other party's true intentions. He could only smile apologetically and continue. It's nothing, it's nothing. The Lung Feng soldiers have sacrificed so much for the entire city and island. It's only right for me to contribute a little. It's only right. It's only right. Then I ask young Master Yang to cooperate with us again and make a trip with us. Tung Shan still had a smile on his face as he spoke. At the same time, he was disgusted by Yang Tiezhu's hypocrisy. Since he was able to enter the Yang residence in the middle of the night, he naturally received orders and knew the cause and effect of the matter. Although he did not know the details, his intuition told him that Yang Taiju was finished this time. Even Yang family would not be any better. Since that was the case, why should he be polite to a person who was destined to be finished? Seeing that Tingshan suddenly turned hostile and wanted to take him away, Yang Tieju's face completely changed. What are you doing? What are you doing? Commander Tung, are you mistaken? I'm one of your own people. I'm also an officer in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. What authority do you have to take me away? Do you know the Ministry of Foreign Affairs? Relying on his father's relationship, Yang Taiju had indeed obtained a position in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He was not in charge of anything. To put it bluntly, he was just in charge of an official position. Now, this amulet had finally come into play. Seeing that Yang Taiju did not cooperate and even used the name of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Tingshan did not show the slightest bit of surprise. Instead, he smiled and said, "Young Master Yang, please cooperate with us. As for your identity as an officer in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we will give you a satisfactory answer very soon. Come, take him away." Tingshan didn't want to waste any more time. After giving the order, 2 cold vanguard warriors with big waists walked out from behind him and rushed to Yang Tieju's front. They lowered their heads and gave Yang Taiju a firm press. Yang Taiju, whose body was restrained and head was pressed down, did not give up resisting. He still shouted with all his might, "Let me go! Let me go! I'm an officer in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You can't do this to me! You can't!" His shouts went from his courtyard to the main entrance of the Yang residence. Just as Tingshan and the rest appeared here, a thunderous voice rang in their ears. "What are you doing?" Hearing this voice, Yang Taiju, who was pressed down, seemed to have found his backbone. He raised his head abruptly and saw that the person who spoke was his father, Yang Shan. He immediately shouted, "Father, save me! Father, save me! My son, don't worry. With your father here, no one can take you away from the residence. I have already arranged for someone to inform your wife. I believe she will not allow anyone to do this." Yang Shan's mountain-like voice rang out once again. At this moment, he displayed sufficient calmness. Although Yang Shan did not participate in some of Yang Tieju's matters, it was impossible to say that he did not know anything. His son had done a lot of things under his name. He had more or less heard about it, but he did not interfere. Firstly, it was because he loved his son dearly. Secondly, his son would give him a lot of gold and silver every time. He used this to unite many officials and colleagues, which allowed him to do his work more easily. Not only did Yang Shan not feel ashamed of his son's actions, he even thought that this was a manifestation of his ability. After all, when he was an official in the Great Ming, who knew how many officials would take advantage of the situation to do things that crossed the line? When everyone did this, there was no need to criticize others. Therefore, he also thought that it was normal for the same thing to happen in Chichen City. Not to mention, his son was very scheming. Before doing anything, he first married the servant girl that the 5th Madam had an important position in. This was equivalent to finding a strong ally and backer. His son was so careful in doing things, so he would only be more at ease. However, tonight, Lung Feng suddenly entered the residence and indeed caught him off guard. However, he was not very frightened. Other than sending someone to inform Lin Lin, this daughter-in-law with a strong background, he only needed to stall for time. For him, as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, this was not a big deal. After saying this confidently, Yang Shan looked at Tingshan and said sternly, "Regiment Commander Tung, my son is an official in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He's a cadre. He's an official who has been appointed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. What happened to him should be investigated by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so it is better not to trouble you." The Ministry of Foreign Affairs was clearly Yang Shan treated Yang Tieju's matter as an internal matter of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so it should be handled and solved by them. Yang Shan was confident, but he thought about it carefully. Since Tingshan had appeared here, how could it be possible that he did not have anything to rely on? Facing Yang Shan, this high official, Tingshan's tone was very calm, but he was also very calm. He said in a businesslike manner, I'm sorry, Minister Yang. I received the order to take young Master Yang away. As for what the Ministry of Foreign Affairs wants to do, that is your business. Please do not affect my work. I'm also talking about work. I represent the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Yang Shan did not have the slightest intention of backing down. He also shouted in a thunderous voice. It was really difficult for him. He was not young, but he seemed to be very confident. Chapter 733. This time, Yang Shan wanted to use his seniority to oppress the other party. It was true that Yang Qindong had his eyes on Tingshan, but he was only a regiment commander. Facing the Minister of Foreign Affairs, there was still a lot of pressure. Just as the situation became tense, a thunderous voice suddenly came from behind the lung phone. I'm sorry, Minister Yang, but you can no longer represent the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. As the voice fell, a group of people walked out from behind the crowd. When they saw this group of people, all the lung phone involuntarily took a step back and showed a very respectful expression. This was because the three people who came were of high status. Two of them were of high status. They were Yang Wu, Lung Song, and Ma Dali. There was no need to say much about Yang Wu. When Yang Qindong was in Crimson City, he was the Minister of Foreign Affairs representative. His status was even higher than City Lord Yuqian. Lung Song was the commander of the army's 1st Division and was known as the #1 person in the army. There were even rumors that the 1st Division would become the 1st Army. When that time came, if there were no accidents, the position of 1st Army Commander would fall on him. He was also the superior of all the Lung Feng in the city. His every move was naturally very eye-catching. The third person was Ma Dali. Although his name was very domineering and he looked very burly, he had an official status. He was the first deputy minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Someone once said that the people in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs should be eloquent and look kind. Only then would it be helpful for both sides to negotiate. A brawny man like Ma Dali shouldn't be in such a team. However, when everyone thought that it was inappropriate, Yang Qindong did the opposite. He appointed this person as the first deputy minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and gave the authority to Yang Shan. The reason why he did this was because what Yang Xia needed now was a strong Minister of Foreign Affairs. Ma Dali fit this role perfectly. For example, the shout that Yang Shan could no longer represent the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was made by Ma Dali. When the three of them appeared, the pressure on Tingshan was greatly reduced. Yang Taizhu also lowered his head. He knew very well that this situation was not something his father could handle. Perhaps when Madame arrived, she could represent 5th Madame to deal with these people. Yang Taizhu placed his hopes on his wife. Yang Shan's expression changed rapidly at this moment, especially when he saw Ma Dali appear. His eyelids twitched violently, and his intuition told him that things were not going well. However, for the sake of his son's safety, he had to hold on until his daughter-in-law arrived. So it's 5th Master Yang and Division Master Lung. Your presence brings light to my humble abode, but why didn't you inform me in advance so that I could go out and welcome you? Yang Shan was indeed someone who often dealt with people. His expression quickly returned to normal. He smiled at Yang Wu and Lung Song, as if they were old friends who had a very good relationship. On the other hand, Ma Dali, who was standing beside the two of them, turned a blind eye. Ma Dali was only his assistant. Choosing to ignore him at this moment showed how domineering he was. Yang Shan wanted to use this to tell everyone that those who were not as high as him and those who were not as high as him should not speak anymore. He would not listen either. Both Yang Wu and Lung Song understood Yang Shan's little scheme. Perhaps they did not have this kind of experience before, nor had they experienced such a secret struggle. However, they had been in a high position for so many years. Even if they had not seen a pig being slaughtered, how could they not have eaten pork? In such a big environment, it was not something that could be avoided just because one wanted to. Some things had long been accustomed to. Not only did they understand Yang Shan's little scheme, but they also knew very well in their hearts. Lung Song smiled when he saw that Yang Shan had made his move. Then he said, "It's just to catch a person. How could we alarm Division Master Yang? When Lung Song said this, Yang Shan also smiled. Anyone could tell that this was not a hearty laugh, but a sneer. Division Master Lung makes it sound so easy. This time, the person you want to catch is my son. As a parent, I think I have the right to know what is going on. However, I wonder if Division Master Lung can tell me what crime my son committed. Do you have any evidence? Yang Shan asked in return. His voice did not contain any emotional fluctuations, but anyone could tell that he was on the verge of exploding. It seemed that if a reasonable answer was not given, he would stop them from taking the person away. Who was Yang Shan? During the reign of Ren Xuanji, he became an official of the Great Ming Dynasty. Later, when Zhu Qizhen took over, he was already the assistant minister of the Ministry of Rights. He had also experienced the Tumu Revolution. In the end, he went to the Southern Ming Dynasty under the protection and help of Yang Chendong. Such an experienced person who was used to deceiving each other had long since mastered the art of calmness. He wouldn't be so easily angered. However, he still pretended to be like this. It was tantamount to showing his determination to protect his son's safety. At the same time, he was stalling for time and waiting for his daughter-in-law to arrive. He was also testing Lung Song's confidence. He wanted to see what kind of evidence the other party had and what he needed to do if he wanted to protect his son. Yang Shan stood up. He had single-handedly carried Yang Wu and Lung Song, the two great mountains who had come to the manor. His boldness was enough, and his courage was admirable. If it was some ordinary small matter, he would have to give face and let him go if he personally stood up. What was pitiful was that this time, the order was personally given by the sixth young master. No matter how determined Yang Shan was, he could not overturn the situation this time. The reason why they did not use thunderous methods was because the batch of things that had been sent to the sea had not been shipped back. They could not be completely sure what was inside. Without any definite information, Lung Song was not in a hurry to make the final move. Instead, he chuckled and said, "This is strange. Doesn't your son know what he has done? Why is he asking me about it?" "Commander Lung, I did not do anything. You are accusing me wrongly. It is nothing more than your military being envious of our Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You are accusing me wrongly." Although Yang Taizhu, who was being escorted, was restrained, his mouth was not sealed. He could still speak. Seeing that his father was exonerating him, he took the opportunity to shout and shout. Of course, no one knew how true these words were. Most importantly, Yang Wu was here. If he heard some of these words, would he think that this matter was originally due to the conflict between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the military department? That was why this happened? After Yang Tieju's accusation, many of the Cold Front soldiers' faces turned ugly. Tung Shan, for example, wished he could give Yang Shan a tight slap across the face and let him know the consequences of slandering the military and its soldiers. On the other hand, Lung Song was not in a hurry. He just stood there with his hands behind his back and smiled. No one knew better than him that this time, he took action completely because Director Yang San personally came and arranged it. He was just following orders. Why would he be afraid of being accused or even framed? Yang Shan and Yang Tieju's counterattack made the originally tense Yang family courtyard fall into silence. Suddenly, everyone stopped talking. They just looked at each other like they were waiting for something. Yes, everyone was waiting. The Yang father and son were waiting for Lin's arrival. As long as she came, she could represent the fifth young mistress to express her attitude. She was one of the matriarchs. When the master was not around, no one could shake the position of the matriarch. She would have the effect of changing the situation. Yang Wu and Lung Song were waiting for the news from the new dock. As long as the cargo ship was transported back, Chen Shuquan would be caught and betrayed Yang Taizhu. Then, they could start the next step of the operation. At that time, no one would be able to stop them. While waiting like this, the 3 cargo ships on the new dock of Qiqian City began to dock again. The dozens of large carts of goods on them were also transported back to the new dock one by one. Director Chen Shuquan, who was about to leave, was stunned by the scene in front of him. According to his habit, Every time the goods were transported out, he would stay at the new dock for a while. After confirming that there were no other problems, he would leave. After all, it was the goods of the Security Bureau. As the director, it was reasonable for him to stay a little longer. Of course, he would stay a little longer because Chun Shuquan was cautious. He was worried that someone would have designs on the cargo ships of the Security Bureau. If he did not stay here, what would he do if something went wrong? It was this long stop that allowed him to see a good show. The 3 cargo ships that had just set out sailed back, and even the Cold Front Navy came back with the ships. The ships were still the same ships, and the escorts were still the same people. The appearance of this scene made Chun Shuchuan's heart skip a beat. He had a hunch that something bad was going to happen. He pretended to be calm and walked towards the 3 ships of goods that were docked at the dock. He was still far away, but his shout could be heard. What happened? Why are the goods being transported back? Director Chun, there was an order from above. We don't know what's going on. A Cold Front platoon leader in charge of escorting the goods said with a salute. The platoon leader really didn't know what happened. Due to the difference in status between the two of them, he was telling the truth. Chun Shuquan saw the platoon leader's respect. He seemed to see hope. His face changed, and he said sternly, "Order? Who gave the order? Do you know that this is what the Security Bureau wants? There are a lot of things involved. How can they stop just like that? Send the goods out immediately. As for the order, I will take it for you. I promise that you will not be punished." Chapter 734. Chun Shuchuan's thinking was simple. As long as the goods were sent out of the sea and handed over to the people arranged by Yang Taiju overseas, there would be no evidence. At that time, he could just say that he didn't know anything. Without evidence, no one could casually convict him. No matter what, Chun Shuquan was still the head of the Security Bureau's office in Crimson City. His words were still very authoritative. Hearing this, Platoon Leader Lung Feng hesitated. After all, offending the head of the Security Bureau was not a wise move. If he really wanted to target him, how could he, a small platoon leader, resist? Platoon Leader Lung Feng was still in a mental struggle, hesitating about what to do. On the new pier, another group of people had appeared. The leader was a young man with delicate features. The moment he appeared, he laughed heartily. "Brother Chun, you have such great authority. Lung Feng doesn't belong to our Security Bureau, yet you can order him around as you please. You're really amazing. Who is it? Who is secretly making sarcastic remarks? Come out if you have the ability." As soon as the sarcastic remarks were heard, Chun Shuchuan's face darkened. He suddenly turned his head, looking like he was looking for someone to punish. Chun Shuquan did indeed have such confidence. Director Yang San was not in Crimson City, so he was the highest-ranking person in charge of the Security Bureau here. From a certain point of view, he could exist side by side with military chiefs like Lung Song and Gao Xiong. Even if the people from the political department came, he could still wrestle with them. Due to the confidentiality rules, the Security Bureau was independent of any system and was directly under the 6th Young Master's jurisdiction. In other words, even if Yang Wuyi appeared here, if he was unyielding, he could still face him head-on. Of course, all of this was limited to the other party not receiving the 6th Young Master's orders. Thinking about how he dared to face Yang Wuyi, what a proud existence he was. It was no wonder that when he heard people talking about him like this, he immediately shouted like a plucked rooster. "Ha ha, Brother Chun, I haven't been hiding in the dark. I've been standing here all this time. It's just that your standards are too high and you didn't notice me." As the laughter continued, Che Chao led a group of 20 members of the Security Bureau's operations team that had been transferred from various places to Chinshuquan. A group of people strode over. Because it was dark, they couldn't see clearly, but Chinshuchuan's expression had already begun to change. Since the other party was so fearless, his identity must not be simple. Moreover, the goods were right in front of him. How was he going to explain himself under such conclusive evidence? Chun Shuchuan's brain spun rapidly as he formulated various countermeasures in his mind. At this time, Che Chao had already strode in front of him. With the help of the street lights on the pier, they could finally see each other clearly. At this moment, Chen Shuchuan's face was filled with shock. Che Chao, how could it be you? Why can't it be me? Che Chao, who was far calmer than Chen Shuquan, had a smile on his face as he slowly asked, Brother Chen, why are you so nervous? Could it be that my appearance has delayed your good fortune? When he suddenly saw Che Chao, Chen Shuquan was indeed shocked. He could not understand why the other party would appear in Crimson City, and why he did not receive any news at all. However, he soon calmed down. After all, the other party's level was lower than his. Even so, what was there to be afraid of? Perhaps the other party had come to Crimson City to settle some personal matters, or perhaps to visit family and friends. At this point, it must be said that the majority of the staff of the Security Bureau lived in the dark, and the mental pressure was immense. Therefore, every year, they would have a normal holiday to return to society and be an ordinary person. Otherwise, they would be driven crazy. Chen Shuquan thought that Che Chao was probably on vacation, and he just happened to appear in Crimson City, which was why this scene was happening in front of him. It could be said that he was comforting himself. But in short, Chen Shuquan quickly calmed down and strode towards Che Chao. As he walked, he said, Brother Che, it's not that I want to nag you, but since you've come to Crimson City, you should at least greet me so that I can do my part of the host, right? Chen Shuquan took the initiative to get close to Che Chao, and Che Chao also smiled and replied, Hey, I know that Brother Chen is busy, so I didn't come to disturb you. Please don't blame me. Che Chao, being so polite, made Chen Shuquan feel more at ease, and the smile on his face grew wider. What do you mean by disturb? You don't treat me as one of your own. Just based on this point, you should be punished. How about this? I'll punish you with 3 cups of wine tonight. Haha, let's go. I'll find a place to welcome you. As he spoke, Chen Shuchuan's large hand had already landed on Che Chao's shoulder. Those who didn't know would think that their relationship was very good. Che Chao, who was originally cupping his fists and apologizing, was waiting for Chen Shuchuan's hand to land on his shoulder. The smile on his face suddenly disappeared and was replaced by a cold expression. His large hand suddenly grabbed Chen Shuchuan's arm from his chest, and then, with a twist, he pulled Chen Shuquan into his embrace, and a Type 54 firearm was pressed against Chen Shuchuan's temple. I'm sorry, Director Chen. I have important matters to attend to, so I don't have the time to drink with you. The sudden change in the situation made Chen Shuchuan's subordinates, who were watching everything with a smile, stunned. Then, under the conditioned reflex of their years of training, a few of them reached into their waists, pulled out the knives on their waist, and shouted, What are you doing? Release Director Chen immediately. Don't be agitated. Don't be agitated. Let's observe the situation first. Dong Hui, who was mixed in the crowd, played a role at this time. He stretched out his arms, stopping everyone from being impulsive, and gave a few of his subordinates a look. Under Dong Hui's lead, a few of his subordinates also joined the ranks of persuading everyone not to be impulsive, causing the originally tense atmosphere to be suppressed. At this time, Chen Shuquan was in Che Chao's embrace, facing his subordinates. Seeing Dong Hui's performance, his eyes seemed to be about to pop out. But at this time, he also knew that this was not the time to fight with Dong Hui. His opponent was still Che Chao. Old brother Che, what are you doing? Do you know that everything you're doing is offending your superiors? Do you know, according to our internal family law, if you do this, not only will you die, your family won't get any benefits? Let me tell you, let me go immediately, and for the sake of our previous relationship, I can pretend that nothing happened. Chen Shuquan was still suppressing people with his power, trying to make Che Chao stop. But now that he had the initiative, how could Che Chao easily let go? He looked at the back of Chen Shuchuan's head with a smile, as if he was looking at an idiot. Director Chen, things have already turned out like this. Don't you know how to repent? Tell me, where are these things going to be shipped? Of course it's to the Security Bureau. Chen Shuquan gritted his teeth and said, Security Bureau? Why don't I know about it? Che Chao asked again. Your rank is not high enough, of course you don't know. Let me tell you, this is the director's arrangement, and it's classified as a top secret. It's already a mistake for you to know this now, Do you understand? Relying on his higher rank, Chen Shuquan spouted nonsense. Now, as long as he could get through this, he would find a random crime to take down Che Chao. In short, he would not give Che Chao a chance to ask Yang San. He wanted to silence him. Chen Shuquan was still thinking about what to do once he had the initiative, when a very familiar voice came from behind him. I don't understand. I've never given such an order, but I don't know who you heard it from. Of course you don't understand. This is the Bureau. Chen Shuquan was about to say something with an arrogant look, but suddenly he was stunned. This voice was so familiar, it sounded like the Bureau. Directors. Che Chao seemed to know what he was thinking. He loosened his grip slightly, allowing him to turn his head. When he turned his head, he saw Yang San in front of him with a fierce face. Immediately, Chen Shuquan's legs turned to jelly, and he could no longer stand. With a plop, he sat on the ground. The main culprit had appeared, and Chen Shuquan knew that everything was over. The irrefutable evidence was right in front of him. He was afraid that no matter what excuse he found, it would be useless. When he thought of the director's means and the family law of the Security Bureau, it was really difficult for him to die even if he wanted to. His face turned pale at this moment. Bureau, Director, I was wrong. Yang Taiju forced me to do everything. I was too greedy. Yang San didn't say another word, so Chen Shuquan confessed everything. Now, he no longer hoped for a future, or even to live. He only hoped for a quick death and not to implicate his family. He was very grateful. Chen Shuquan was so cooperative, and Yang San stood there and listened coldly. After listening to Chen Shuquan, he sighed softly. Chen Shuquan, you've been in the Security Bureau for a long time, and your name is on the 6th Young Master's list. Do you know that your future is limitless? Do you know how many generations your descendants will be proud of having you as their ancestor? But now, because of your wrong decision, everything is gone. Yang San could not say whether he was lamenting or feeling pity for Chen Shuquan. He shook his head several times. It was obvious that this result made him a little sad. After all, it was not easy to cultivate a talent, and they had known each other for so many years. It was impossible to say that they had no feelings for each other. Now that he had made a mistake, a big mistake, it also meant the end of their friendship. It was no wonder that Yang San was a little sad. Yes, I know that I have done something wrong this time. I am willing to confess everything, and I am willing to testify. I only hope that the director will not implicate my family and give me a quick death. Chen Shuquan could feel the sadness in Yang San's heart. How could he feel good in his heart? But since he had embarked on this path, there was no turning back. At this time, he could only use the last trace of the director's feelings for him to make his own request. Chapter 735. Cooperate well. I promise I won't implicate your family. Yang San knew what Chen Shuquan was worried about. Perhaps this was the only thing he could do for the other party. He patted the other party's shoulder lightly. Che Chao, I'll leave this to you. He will cooperate well with you and tell you everything we want to know. Director, don't worry. I'll get the confession immediately. Che Chao patted his chest and promised. There was a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. The chance to make a big contribution had come. As long as he did this well, he could get promoted as he wished and become the new director of the Crimson City Security Bureau. One was eager to make a contribution. The other was eager to atone for his sins. The two of them got together, and the process of taking notes and testimonies went very smoothly. In just half an hour, a clear file appeared in front of Yang San, who was in the duty room. After taking a quick look, Yang San sighed softly. Send someone to inform Yang Wu and the palace. It's time to reel in the net. Also, get the action team to move out. All the officials related to this matter must not be let off. Arrest them all. Yes, I'll do it immediately. Che Chao replied and turned to leave. This night, Crimson City was destined to not be peaceful. Palace. This palace occupied a large area and was built magnificently. It seemed to be an independent existence from Crimson City. Although the master was rarely here, no one dared to disrespect this place. so much so that anyone who walked out of this place could issue orders, and they all had a higher status than anyone else. Lin, this woman with average looks and beauty, was at most 30%, was one of the people who often went in and out of the palace. With her eloquence that could make a dead person come back to life, she gained the trust of the fifth Madame, Su Mon and became the representative of the fifth Madame. Originally, Su Mon had a personal maid named Xiao Yun. However, this maid was a little lazy. In the end, the purchasing of the necessities of the palace fell to Lin, who had been by Su Mon's side since she came to Crimson City. Lin was a person who knew how to conduct herself. Not only did she know how to say nice things to make Su Mon laugh heartily, she also had a very good relationship with the other maids. In this regard, her husband, Yang Taizhu, was also very willing to spend money. With money, she could naturally bribe many people to do things for her. It was precisely because Lin usually paid attention to the people around her that she was able to rope in more people. When the Yang mansion was surrounded, Yang Shan arranged for his trusted steward to leave through the secret passage in the mansion and come to the palace. Soon, a servant girl who had received favor handed the news to Lin. Lin, who suddenly received the news, was shocked. Although she didn't know what her husband, Yang Taizhu, did for a living, seeing how generous he usually was, she could guess that the money might not be so honorable. Because of this matter, she had hesitated and considered. However, when she thought of how his father was the dignified Minister of Foreign Affairs and was the person favored by the sixth young master, it was reasonable for such a family to have some unexpected wealth. She didn't think too much about it. However, now it seemed that the matter was a little serious. Once something happened to her husband, she would have no backing and no income. How could she unite more maids in the future? This would shake her foundation. She had no choice but to save him. Lin decided to take action. However, before leaving the palace, she still had a very important thing to do. That was to first obtain the support of the fifth Madame. Only in this way could she be considered to have the sword of the imperial court. Only then could she do things without fear. Is Madame asleep? Lin came to the room where Su Mon was resting and asked the maid on duty tonight. Not yet. Sister Lin, is something the matter? The maid on duty had a good relationship with Lin and asked with a smile. I have a small matter to see, Madame. On the surface, Lin acted as if nothing had happened. As she spoke, she had already walked into the bedroom. When she saw Su Mon sitting in front of the god's mirror removing her makeup, she knelt on the ground without another word. It was just an action without a word, but it gave Xiao Yun a fright. Su Mon, who was sitting there, also saw everything that happened behind her through the divine mirror. She was also shocked. Linger, what happened? Why do you have to be so respectful? It was just like how Yang Qindong asked his subordinates not to kneel for no reason. In the palace, unless it was an important occasion, there was no rule to kneel. Madam, please save Linger. Save the life of my husband's family. With a tear-stained face, Lin looked like an excellent actress at this moment. She spoke as if she had been wronged. What's going on? Stand up and talk. Su Mon's expression became much more serious when she heard this. This maid, who was very considerate of her, was married to the son of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yang Shan. What exactly happened that even Minister Yang was unable to save her? Su Mon, who had already thought of the wording, started to distort the truth. She said that Minister Yang had long made people jealous because of his high position and power. She said that the Yang family had a relationship with Madame again, causing some people to be jealous. She said that it was not a matter of a day for everyone to overthrow Minister Yang and so on. In the end, Lin said bluntly, Madam, the downfall of my husband's family is a small matter, but it will affect Madame's reputation. What's more, there will be people who want to take the opportunity to attack the sixth young master's prestige. This is a big matter. The sixth young master is not in the city all year round, and the development of the city is so prosperous. It's hard to tell what's in a person's heart. Su Mon did not pay much attention to the previous words. Even if it involved herself, she did not pay much attention to it. It was enough for her husband to know what kind of person she was. As for the opinions of others, she did not care at all, because without her husband, she was probably a dead person now. It was hateful that she believed the one-sided words of a villain and even had delusions of killing her husband. Now that she thought about it, she really regretted it. All of this made Su Maner extremely grateful to Yang Chendong. She would not allow anyone to threaten her husband's safety, even if her reputation was damaged. Now that she heard that someone actually had such an idea, how could she not be angry? She glared and said, "How preposterous. Is it true that because my husband is not around, some people want to indulge in wild fantasies?" "Yes, madam. This matter is not a small matter. Please make a decision." Seeing that Su Maner had fallen into a trap, Lin Lin was overjoyed and continued to instigate her. Lin Lin was asking what to do next. Should she help the Yang family? In this way, it would be equivalent to indirectly helping her. Su Maner understood the hidden meaning in his words. After thinking for a while, she said, "Then go and take a look. If they're trying to frame you, then let them investigate seriously. If they really did do it, then even you are not allowed to speak carelessly." Su Maner was still smart. She did not make a conclusion about things that she did not understand. Instead, she wanted to base it on facts. However, how could she know that the starting point of any matter might be good, but in the end, it depended on who was carrying it out? If the person carrying it out was someone who could not distinguish right from wrong, wanted to have a fair decision would become a delusion. Lin Lin was waiting for this sentence. She immediately agreed, stood up, and walked out of the bedroom. At this moment, she was no longer acting like a weak woman just now. Instead, she was filled with pride and confidence. "Oomph. Since you dare to go against my husband's family, then you can wait to be dealt with." After receiving Su Maner's support, Lin Lin seemed to have changed into a different person. When she walked out of the palace, her expression was filled with confidence. She wanted to use the name of Tiger. What could others do about it? Leading 4 maids, Lin Lin walked in front with large strides. Her arrogant appearance made her look like a master. Along the way, all the maids who met her stopped in their tracks from afar. When they got closer, they lowered their heads and asked questions with a fawning and respectful expression. From afar, she could see the outer gate of the palace. As long as she walked past it, she would reach the outer palace. Although there were many guards there in charge of security, with Lin Lin's status, they did not even have the courage to check. It could be said that once she passed through the gate, she would be free to fly. Lin Lin's face subconsciously revealed a victorious smile. However, at this moment, a light shout sounded behind her. "Are you Lin Lin? Wait a moment." Someone suddenly shouted her name behind her. Out of instinct, Lin Lin stopped in her tracks. When she turned around, she saw a group of people coming from afar. She recognized the leader. It was First Madam's personal maid, Xiao Qing. Beside Xiao Qing was the palace's head maid, Tai Die. Sister Xiao Qing. After seeing that it was the young miss, Lin Lin immediately put away her arrogant expression and showed a very well-behaved appearance. She even intentionally bowed. This was the etiquette that only a servant would show to a master. It was no wonder that Lin Lin was so careful. Although she was valued by the 5th Madam and was considered a superior existence among the maids, she was still nothing in front of Xiao Qing. She was First Madam's favorite and had grown up with First Madam. Putting aside the fact that their relationship had been nurtured since they were young, Xiao Qing's husband, Sun Chuang, was already a battalion officer. Even the 6th young master had taken note of him. It could be said that his future was bright. Normally, such a person could open her own residence and be a mistress. However, she didn't. Instead, she stayed by the eldest madam's side and served her wholeheartedly. Just based on this, which maid in the palace didn't respect her? Which maid dared to give her a hard time? The sudden appearance of little Qing forced Lin Lin to stop her footsteps and stand there with a respectful expression. Chapter 736. Little Qing took small steps and soon arrived in front of Lin Lin. She first looked her up and down and then asked with a smile, "Little sister Lin Lin, it's so late. Where are you going? If someone else asked her this question, Lin Lin could choose not to answer. They were all maids. One served the first madam, and the other served the fifth madam. They usually minded their own business. But since it was little Ching who asked the question, Lin Lin had to answer. It's like this. The fifth madam has something for me to do. So I left the palace late at night. I see. Since it's like this, you don't have to go. Go back and wait for the news. Little Ching nodded and then said slowly, HM. Lin Lin was also confused by this sentence. She looked up and said to Little Ching, Sister Little Ching, I don't know if you didn't hear clearly. I went out this time on the fifth madam's orders. I know. That's why I told you to go back and wait. Little Ching didn't wait for her to finish and stopped her. Then she turned her head and looked at the 8 maids behind her, especially the leader, Tai Jie, and said, Listen well. Send little sister Little Ching and the others back. Don't wander around outside. After saying this casually, Little Ching turned and left. She didn't even want to explain. The 8 maids behind her all stayed and stared at Lin Lin and the others. It seemed that if they didn't listen, then don't blame them for being rude. She was stopped. Even though it was Little Ching who gave this order, Lin Lin was still a bit unconvinced. Although she could go back and ask fifth madam again, it would inevitably delay time. Who knew if there would be any changes in the situation? So her eyes moved, and she looked at the 8 maids surrounding her. She smiled and said, Sisters, we're all maids and it's not easy for us. Why don't you make it easy? If you do me a favor, I will remember it in my heart. As she spoke, Lin Lin took out a stack of banknotes from her sleeves. The smallest banknote on the stack was worth 100 taels. She took out 800 taels. One had to say that Lin Lin was very generous. If it was any other time, the maids below would be beaming with joy and would say some words of blessings as they received the banknotes. However, it was a pity that this time, the trick that worked every single time did not work. The faces of the 8 maids didn't change at all. The leader, Tai Jie, acted as if she didn't see the banknotes and said, Lin Lin, you'd better not make things difficult for us. Be obedient. Otherwise, once we start fighting, it will be really embarrassing. After getting the cold shoulder, Lin Lin's face became very ugly. She gritted her teeth and said, Okay, then I'll go find the fifth madam. I don't believe that there's no justice in the palace. As she spoke, she turned around angrily and walked straight to the palace where the fifth madam was resting. At this time, Lin Lin didn't know that her backer, the fifth madam, had been invited to the first madam's palace. Not only Madame Wu, but Madame Shui, the third madam, was also there. At this time, they were reading a telegram sent by Yang Chendong, which talked about some things about Yang Taiju. Su Maner had just left when she received a message saying that the first madam had invited her. In the days when Yang Chendong was not around, the master of the palace was naturally the first madam, Hu Yin. Now that the first madam had given the order, not to mention that she had not yet rested. Even if she had rested, she still had to get dressed and get up. Su Maner didn't dare to delay. With the help of the maid, Xiao Yun, she put on some light makeup and rushed to the first madam's palace with a group of maids. As soon as she entered the hall, she saw that Hu Yin and Madame Shui had already taken their seats. Fifth sister, you're here. Come and sit. Seeing Su Maner appear, Hu Yan's face didn't have the slightest hint of anger or condemnation because she already knew that Lin Lin's actions were carried out behind Su Maner's back. In fact, this sister of hers didn't know anything. Su Maner really didn't know anything. Since the first madam called her, she naturally sat down. Then, she smiled and asked Hu Yin, Sister, what happened? Something must have happened for them to call her over so late at night. Su Maner's IQ wasn't low. She didn't think that the sisters would gather at this time just to chat about their daily lives. This time, before Hu Yin could speak, Madame Shui had already passed the telegram to her. Fifth sister, you should take a look at this first. With a face full of doubt, Su Maner took the telegram from the maid, Xiao Yun. Where her gaze fell on the contents of the telegram, Su Maner's expression quickly became a little ugly. Perhaps a telegram to others could be sent more simply, as long as the meaning was clear. But how could Yang Chendong be stingy with his words when sending a telegram to his wife? In this telegram, Yang Qindong explained everything very clearly. He even mentioned Lin Lin's name. Although some things couldn't be described in such detail like when they met, the mention of Lin Lin's name already explained a lot of things. While Su Maner was still digesting this news, Huyen had already opened her mouth and said, "This time, my husband is really angry. He risked his life at the front lines to fight for the world, working hard to save more Han people. But we still have to worry about our rear. Speaking of which, it's really our fault." It was a simple sentence, but Su Maner's expression froze when she heard it. She knew that she had really done something wrong this time. She had actually mistakenly trusted a maidservant and unknowingly passed on such a wrong signal to others, which had almost led to a disaster. Thinking that if it wasn't for her bad judgment, she wouldn't have made her husband worry about this. Su Maner felt waves of self-blame. Just as Su Maner was still accepting the condemnation in her heart, Xiao Yun suddenly entered the hall. She first greeted them and bowed. Then she said, "Madam, third madam, fifth madam, Sun Chuang of the Imperial Army has something to discuss with you. Your husband is here. Let him in," Huyen said jokingly. From this point, it could be seen that she was not very angry. She, who had lived in the Hu family since she was young, was even more tired of hearing about all kinds of struggles. She had seen many servants doing bad things in the name of their master. It was precisely because of this that she didn't find it strange. Lin Lin was guilty, so she would be punished. As for fifth sister, after this incident, she should be more careful when using people. This was equivalent to having an effect. Xiao Yun, who was teased by her master, blushed. After agreeing, she went out to pass on the message. Soon, Sun Chuang, who had the rank of major, walked into the hall. He strode in, but once he entered the hall, he knelt on the ground without raising his head. He knew very well what kind of status the three people in front of him had. If he casually looked at them, it would be a sin. Sun Chuang of the Imperial Army greets first madam, third madam, and fifth madam. A loud and clear voice sounded in the hall. "Get up. What's the matter at this time of night?" Huyen sat at the head of the table and asked in the manner of a host. Reporting to first madam, news just came from the front. The matter of Yang Tieju's smuggling has been confirmed without a doubt. Not only that, his collaborator also said that there are a large number of weapons and armors in the Yang residence. This subordinate has come to temporarily close the palace gates in advance. Please allow me to do so. Sun Chuang's head was still lowered, but he did say a fact and result that the women did not expect. Are they going to rebel? When Huyen heard this, she was also shocked. It was common for subordinates to do some evil things in the name of their master, and it was also very difficult to truly prohibit it. However, the matter at hand involved military supplies, so the nature of the matter had changed. Among the three women, when Su Maner heard this, she was so scared that her face turned pale. Even the newspaper in her hand fell to the ground. At this moment, she finally knew what kind of end she had gotten for her nepotism. And it was her husband who had sensed all of this. If her husband had not seen through everything, what kind of result would there be? Would there be a day when someone would threaten the safety of the palace? If her two sisters were really hurt because of this, wouldn't she be guilty of the most heinous crimes? At this moment, Su Maner hated Lin Lin to the core. She had trusted her so much, but she had indeed used her name to help the evildoer. Something big had almost happened. It was truly unforgivable. Third Madam's expression also changed abruptly. Then, she looked at First Madam Huyen and said, "Sister, the matter isn't that serious, right? Isn't Yang Wu at Yangshan's place? He shouldn't give them a chance to resist. Isn't it better to be on guard?" Huyen shook her head lightly. It was better to be safe than sorry. When she thought about how someone really threatened the safety of the palace, it was fine if something happened to her and the others, but she was afraid that it would cause her husband to go crazy. If that happened, many plans would be disrupted. This was a most terrible thing. Her husband was risking his life at the front. It was fine if they could not provide any help, but they definitely could not be a hindrance at the back. Thinking of this, Huyen said decisively, "All right, We'll do as Battalion Commander Sun says. Seal the palace for now. If there aren't enough troops, you could deploy troops nearby. In a while, I will ask Xiao Yun to give you the token that my husband gave me. Yes, Sun Chuang understands. Sun Chuang left with large strides. Holding the token that Hu Yin gave him, he mobilized a cold front battalion to protect the palace. And inside the palace, the three madams also returned to their own palaces. Su Mon also returned, but her expression was not good. Thinking about what she had said before the three sisters separated, she would definitely give them an explanation. On the way back, she clenched her right fist several times, loosened it, and clenched it again. Chapter 737. Su Mon had been through a lot since she was young, and her willpower had long been tempered to be very firm. Otherwise, she would not have attempted to assassinate Yang Chendong. But recently, or rather, ever since she came to Crimson City, she was completely protected. Every day, there were people serving her in the palace. Over time, her wildness had been worn away, and she had become much purer. She originally thought that her life would be like this. One day, when she gave birth to a child for her husband, she would be happy for the rest of her life. But now, it seemed that conflicts were everywhere. If she was careless, she might be consigned to eternal damnation. Fortunately, her husband was reasonable and understood people's hearts. Her sisters were also kind-hearted and did not have the intention to blame her. If it was someone else, this matter would probably be enough to put her to death, and she would never be able to make a comeback. Since her husband understood her so well, then not only did she have to clean up the beginning and end of this matter, she also had to do some other things. She was lazy from staying in the palace every day. It was time for her to stretch her muscles and bones. As she thought about it, she returned to her palace. From afar, she saw Lin Lin, who had an aggrieved expression, walking over. "Madam, I wanted to leave the palace, but I was stopped by Xiao Qing." "How is she stopping me? She is clearly not giving you face." "Xiao Yun, take her down and slap her 30 times. Without waiting for Lin Lin to finish speaking, Su Mon voice sounded. At this time, this woman was still trying to sow discord in front of her. Her intentions were truly hateful. Xiao Yun, who was at the side, did not know what had happened. She only knew that Madame's expression was not good after she returned. Now that there was an order, she did not dare to disobey. She brought 2 maids to Lin Lin's side, and a series of loud, slapping sounds rang out. Lin Lin was still thinking that this time, she was ordered to leave the palace. This time, 5th Madame would definitely stand on her side. Who would have thought that there would be such an outcome? When the palm hit her face, she did not react. It was only after being slapped a few times that she became clear-headed and cried out that she had been wronged. At this time, Su Mon had already entered the inner chamber. Xiao Yun followed by the side with a face full of confusion and doubt. Su Mon trusted this maidservant who had followed her for many years. She didn't hide anything and told her the gist of the matter. Xiao Yun, who heard the truth, was also shocked. There's actually such a thing? Doesn't that mean Lin Lin is also one of the accomplices? Then what are we? Yes, what are we? Su Mon repeated this sentence with a bitter smile on her face. Su Mon finally knew how much pressure this matter would bring her. Even if after this matter, her husband did not blame her, what would those maids in the palace think? What would those high officials in Crimson City think? It seemed that she had to do something. Xiao Yun, go and interrogate Lin Lin with Captain Tai later. I want to know what she did behind her backs. Su Mon bit her lips and said, Yes, ma'am. Xiao Yun also knew the importance of this matter and hurriedly agreed. However, she still had some doubts as she asked, What if Lin Lin doesn't say it? She has a lot of ideas. We can use any method. She won't keep it a secret. All right, doesn't she still have a father outside the palace who drinks every day? If she doesn't say it, then she will be harming her father. As Su Mon spoke, her eyes revealed a terrifying aura. People say that if you don't experience some things, you will never grow up and mature. And this time, Sumaner had obviously grown up a lot. Hearing that even her family was being threatened, Xiao Yin knew what to do. And with her father's threat, she was not afraid that Lin Lin would not say it. But what should she do after saying it? She had no choice but to ask, how should we deal with Lin Lin? Kill her. As long as she cooperates, you can tell her that her father can still live out his remaining years in peace. She seemed to have used the last bit of her strength to say this. Sumaner waved her hand at Xiao Yun, meaning that she was tired and needed a good rest. Xiao Yun left, but she did not know that Sumaner, who was in the bedroom, was not sleeping. Instead, she was thinking of a very big plan. A department that would eventually be comparable to the Security Bureau became a prototype that night. After reporting it to Yang Qindong, it was given a new name, the Central Intelligence Agency. And the boss of this Central Intelligence Agency was Sumaner. Its appearance would greatly make up for some of the negligence of the Security Bureau. In the future, it would make countless military achievements. This was probably something that even Yang Qindong did not foresee. After Lin Lin was slapped 30 times, she, who had a mouth full of blood, was dragged to the woodshed at the side. There, Xiao Yun set up a temporary torture chamber. Whether it was coercion or enticement, in the end, she found out everything she wanted to know. The result was still very gratifying. Lin Lin was only after Yang Tieju's family background and money. She did not really participate in what he did. This made Sumaner, who knew everything after the fact, heave a sigh of relief. She was guilty, but her sin was not that big. She could finally face Yang Qindong and her sisters. Lin Lin was finished. The father and son of the Yang family, who were still unaware of all this, still placed their hopes on him. After waiting for a long time, no one came. Instead, a secret agent from a security bureau came to the Yang residence. He came to Yang Wu's ear and whispered something softly. Yang Wu was originally standing there calmly, but after hearing the whispered news, his entire person became unwell. His eyes widened as he looked at Yang Shan and the captured Yang Taizhu. Suddenly, he laughed out loud. Good, very good. I didn't expect that you were not only after money, but also have greater ambitions. Men, search. Turn the entire Yang residence upside down 3 times. Even a tile must be smashed into pieces. Absolutely not allow any item to remain intact. Yang Wu suddenly gave this ruthless order, and the Lung Feng soldiers who came with him agreed and began to move. Facing the ruthless Lung Feng warriors, Yang Shan wanted to stop them, but he realized that it was useless. He could not help but ask Yang Wu, Master Yang Wu, what is the meaning of this? What is the meaning of this? What is the meaning of this? Why are you asking me about the good things you did? Yang Wu's face was overflowing with anger. He had just received news from Bureau Chief Yang San. Qin Shuquan said that once when he was drunk, Yang Taizhu boasted that he had prepared some weapons and armor in his residence. If things changed, they could cause havoc in Rayman City and even threaten the safety of the palace in order to protect themselves. Once the news came out, Yang Wu could no longer remain calm. If such a thing really happened, then he had let down the young master's trust. In that case, even if he died, he would not be able to thank the world. Facing such a person, how could he still be courteous at this moment? Yang Wu was angry, so the Lung Feng warriors also began to act. The huge Yang residence was quickly turned over and many things were found. There were more than 4 million taels of gold and silver notes. This was equivalent to Baiming's or Nanming's annual income. After Yang Taizhu started smuggling, he had earned so much in just a few times. This did not even include the huge expenses. From this, one could see how big the profits were. Other than the gold and silver, there were actually 2088 rifles, 300 sharp swords and spears, hundreds of sets of armor, and dozens of boxes of bullets and grenades. When these things were piled up like a small mountain in the courtyard of the Yang residence, Yang Shan finally lost his imposing manner and fell to the ground with a plop. At this moment, Yang Shan finally understood how big his son's ambition was. He also finally understood what it meant to raise a tiger for calamity. It was just that he was raising his son. The moment these things came out, Yang Taiju lowered his arrogant head. He knew that he was done for. On the other hand, Lung Song was sweating profusely. He didn't dare to imagine what would happen if these weapons suddenly launched an attack. Even if Crimson City did not fall into chaos, it would be difficult to protect some important institutions. Investigate, investigate, investigate for me. How did these things appear here? Chapter 738. People are like this. Once they are in a high position, they are not willing to give up their power. Shinyu was like this. After experiencing the prestige of the Monitoring Bureau chief, he was reluctant to leave. Even if he knew that what he was about to do would offend a lot of people, he was still unwilling to leave. Since Shunyu had already expressed his stance, Yangsan also allowed him to make his choice. However, before they parted ways, he reminded him, "This matter is not over yet. There will be others who will come looking for you. You just have to wait. I hope that you can perform well." He did not say who was looking for him, nor did he say what it was about. Yang San left, leaving Shunyu with a mystery in his heart. This mystery did not last long. Just as he was about to get off work, someone from the Security Bureau came to invite Shunyu to the famous Min Le Fu restaurant in the city for a banquet. Shunyu knew about Min Le Fu. Usually, many people with status were willing to hold their banquets there. He also heard that the background of the restaurant was very strong, but outsiders did not know the specifics. Since Yang San sent someone to inform him, and since he had already said hello, Shunyu would naturally go. After getting off work, he went straight to Min Le Fu restaurant. When he arrived at the restaurant, which covered an area of more than 10,000 square meters, there were already people waiting for him outside. When they saw him arrive, they led him straight to the third floor. In the private room on the third floor, when Shunyu opened the door and entered, he realized that he was not the first to arrive. The 1st Division Commander of the Navy, Gao Xiong, and the political department's Immo Chunyu had arrived before him. Gao Xiong was the commander of the Navy's 1st Division. It was said that the Duke of Loyalty wanted to expand the division into an army. If nothing unexpected happened, this person would become the 1st Navy commander. Ji Chengyu was one of the members of the political department. He was also the political commissar of the Army's 1st Division. There were already rumors that he would become the 1st Vice Minister of the political department. One of them represented the Navy's 1st Division, and the other represented the Army's 1st Division. Their arrival seemed to explain some things. When the three of them met, they naturally had to exchange greetings. However, their personal relationship wasn't very deep. This had to do with their identities and statuses, and also because they each represented different forces. It was impossible for them to sit together and drink and chat merrily. Where there are people, there are rivers and lakes. This sentence was also very appropriate to use here. Even though Yangtze hadn't been established for a long time, and many of them were newcomers, fighting seemed to be something that humans were born with. It was the kind that didn't need to be taught. You could learn it very well and play it very smoothly. Since there were benefits, there would be fights. When it came to who could get more and who could only get less, a struggle was inevitable. Yang Qindong couldn't do anything about this. Of course, this was something he was happy to see. The people below him were all as good as one person. This was not good for his management in the future. The private room was very spacious, at least 100 square meters. The three of them sat in 3 different directions, and soon there was silence. Perhaps they were all wondering why Director Yang San had invited them here. What was he going to do? What kind of performance should they have? Just as the three of them were still immersed in their fantasies, the door suddenly opened and 2 people came in. When the 2 of them appeared, the 3 people in the room hurriedly stood up, their faces filled with respect from the bottom of their hearts. There was no other way. The people who came were the director of the Security Bureau, Yang San, and the future 6th Madam, Luan Xiaoyu. Yes, the one who came with Yang San was Luan Xiaoyu. Not only did she come, but she also walked in front. From this point alone, she should be the host of today's meal. Hello, Director Luan. Because Luan Xiaoyu also had the identity of Director of Publicity before she was brought into the palace by Yang Qindong's legal wife. Everyone was used to calling her Director Luan. Hello, everyone. I made you wait for a long time. I'm really sorry. I just came out from City Lord Yu's place. Luan Xiaoyu had a smile on her face. Although she was very young and was still a few years away from 18 years old, the long-term training had shown results. She showed a very mature side. Even when she saw 3 people with great power, she didn't show the slightest bit of fear. Luan Xiaoyu was very clear in her heart. Who gave her everything today, and why the 3 people in front of her respected her. It was precisely because of this that after receiving Yang Qindong's telegram, she quickly returned to Crimson City from below. She began to carry out the following reforms, investigating the other movements. After the incident with Yang Qindong felt that it was always right to nip the problem in the bud. He couldn't always see the serious consequences before coming out to take care of everything. If that was the case, it would only cause unnecessary internal friction. After making this decision, he placed this heavy responsibility on Luan Xiaoyu. Yang Qindong knew that Luan Xiaoyu was still young, but this person was absolutely loyal to him. Her love for him was also the purest. He didn't have to worry about her betrayal. Moreover, as his woman, she should experience more storms. After all, he couldn't imagine what kind of achievements he would achieve in the future. If the women by his side were too ordinary, then it would really harm them. In the future, when Yang Dong entered the headquarters, he had watched some TV dramas when he had nothing to do. There were quite a few dramas in Guangdong, although he didn't want that scene to happen to him. As his woman, she had to have the ability to protect herself. This was him helping Luan Xiaoyu grow up in advance. After accepting this mission, Luan Xiaoyu also knew that this was Dong Shuai's way of reminding her, so she made up her mind to perform better to prove herself. Thus, she came. Not only did she come, she even went to Yu Qian's office before coming. She chatted with the senior for a long time and decided on the direction of her work. The only regret was that Yu Qian did not accept Luan Xiaoyu's invitation. Even if it was Yang Qindong's intention, the result would be the same. In Yu Qian's words, his main job was still the development of Qiqian City. As for the other work, he would do his best to cooperate, but he would not delve too deeply into it. After all, a person's energy was limited. Yu Qian's rejection was actually for Luan Xiaoyu's sake. Because with his prestige, if he really participated in this matter, she would have nothing to do with it. When she really achieved results, her achievements would also be covered up. Thus, Luan Xiaoyu was grateful from the bottom of her heart for this senior's care and guidance. The moment she entered the private room, Luan Xiaoyu told everyone about her meeting with Yu Qian. This was equivalent to telling everyone that what she wanted to do not only obtain the consent and attention of the 6th young master. This could be seen from her own identity and the fact that Bureau Chief Yang San accompanied her throughout the entire process. She also obtained the full cooperation of the city lord, Yu Qian. The 3 people present were all extremely intelligent. They immediately understood what he meant, and the smiles on their faces widened a little. Since a matter had received so much support, there was no way they could refuse. Luan Xiaoyu walked into the private room, and after greeting the 3 of them, she did not immediately sit down. Instead, she walked to the window of the private room and looked out. At this time, the sky was already dark, but the street lights in Crimson City were already lit up. One could see commoners coming and going on the streets. It was very lively. Not far away, some of the nearby residential areas were also lit up with electric lights. Looking from afar, it really looked like tens of thousands of homes were lit up. According to Yang Qindong's intention, there was no curfew in Crimson City unless there were special circumstances. As time passed, not only were the commoners used to it, it was still very lively even at night. There were even some tea houses, restaurants, brothels, and casinos that had better business at night. This promoted the rich life of the entire city and promoted the economic development of this place. Yes, there were brothels and casinos in Crimson City. However, these industries were not something that everyone could do. They required a special industry certificate issued by the city lord's mansion, and the taxes were heavy. On this point, Yang Shindong was also clear that there were some things that could not be truly prohibited. Rather than letting others secretly hide and do it, it was better to openly take it out and standardize it. He could also collect more business taxes and use it to serve the army and the people. Wouldn't that be better? So lively. Looking out the window, Wan Xiaoyu could not help but say with emotion, "Yes, so lively. This kind of scene can't be seen even in Baiming or Southern Ming's capital." Xinyu also stood up and came to the window. Looking at everything in front of him, he also sighed with emotion. Such a lively place needs to be protected by us. Just based on this, we should all feel proud. Finally, Wan Xiaoyu's seemingly unintentional words began to lead to the main topic of today's conversation. Hearing this, Shen Yu and the other two's expressions turned cold. No one said anything. After all, Yang Tieju's matter had just happened. If everyone sang praises now, it would be too much of a bootlicker. The others did not say anything. Only Wan Xiaoyu continued. "Today, I called everyone here because of my idea, and also because of the sixth young master's idea. After Yang Tieju's matter, he even secretly hid weapons. This might be a special case, but at the same time, it also shows that we did not do our job well. There should be many people and departments involved in this matter, but we were completely unaware of it. In the end, we had to rely on the sixth young master to remind us what to do. Doesn't everyone feel ashamed because of this?" Wan Xiaoyu's voice became louder and louder. At the end, there was a hint of reprimand in her voice. "You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.